Board of November 9th to order. Please, can I have your attention? First item is to call the roll call.
Member Callahan present.
Member Quincy present.
Member Barry present. Member Meade present. 4 members being present, you can proceed. First item on the agenda is excuse me, trying to run a meeting. The minutes of September 14, 2016, which I think everybody has a copy of. Entertain a motion to accept. Is there a second? Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. First item on our agenda is 500 Commander Shea Boulevard. I have a letter addressed to myself and the board regarding the north building at 500 Commander Shea Boulevard, Quincy. Please accept this letter as a request by Federal Express to withdraw their application at this time. Presently, Federal Express is working with Boston Scientific and the City of Quincy to help improve Commander Shea Boulevard. It is Federal Express's hope to be able to resubmit their application with improvements to Commander Shea Boulevard in the near future. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to returning to the board at a later date. Signed, Robert W. Harness. A motion to accept the application to withdraw.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Wait. Can we talk about that one before you vote?
Go ahead.
All right.
Come up here, though.
What's that?
Come up here. Identify yourself.
So Eric Salomon, I live at 90 Quincy Shore Drive.
Over here.
Eric Salomon, 90 Quincy Shore Drive. Thank you for letting me address you before you vote. I ran in here right from the airport. But I did want to at least bring it to your consideration of rejecting the application with prejudice to force them to wait 2 years before resubmitting. Based upon their actions to date, we're 11 months after their initial application. They've made no effort to work with the community. Their improvements to Commander Shea Drive involve filling in swampland, making us more susceptible to flooding, and it really only benefits a select few in Marina Bay. So with that, since they've dragged it out a year and made me come to these meetings every month for the last year, I see no reason to not reject their proposal. That way they can wait 2 years and resubmit, and they can drag it out for 2 years, and they can come back with a better proposal rather than one that seems a little half-assed to me. Thank you.
Sir, come on up.
Hi, my name is Dave Sedlow. I own a condo at 90 Quincy Shore Drive and also 133 Community Shea Boulevard, where the so-called no-name street runs through. So it's actually an access road. The couple things I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but I understood there was only X amount of times somebody could postpone or delay a hearing from the planning board. How many? I don't know. Can you tell me how many times? And did they go beyond their limit? If they went beyond their limit, they should have to reapply in 2 years. Can someone tell me, did they go beyond? They postponed several times, 4, 5, 6, I'm not sure. You know, keep the records. Did they go beyond their limit?
I would tell you that under the special permit under Chapter 48, that there is I think it's 90 days, and I haven't looked at it in a while, and I'm not an attorney, 90 days from the date of submission to take an action, but where they've asked to extend, if you will. So, and again, as a non-legal opinion, it would be my opinion that the clock hasn't started ticking on the 90 days.
Okay. Now, couple things. We're not it's kind of, there's a lot of people that live there, several hundred people. They pay, in just 3 condo associations that are within 50 yards of that impacted street, they probably pay $1.5 million worth of taxes to the city. And every time a hearing is canceled, what would you do if it happens 8, 9? You shrug your shoulders. So what I'm saying is, you understand where I'm coming from.
I do. I'm trying to get a clarity on, do you know this is 8 or 9 times if you?
I know that it is between 4 and 6 times.
I've been to at least 6, I can,
You know, and so it's like, if they've gone beyond, then I would say, you know, you've got to kind of hold it open until we can research this and find out if they went beyond, then they got to go do what everybody else does, if they don't do it correctly. In addition to that, there's 400 or 500 people living within 50 yards of this. There's a bus stop with kids in the morning. This concerned people. It's not just about traffic and money, it's about safety. And we haven't been contacted. How do we mitigate damages like that? I mean, I understand you can make Commander Shea nice, but who's going to pay for the ongoing upkeep of that? We pay $1.5 million taxes, that'll be good for 3 or 4 years with hundreds of trucks going over. It's only 2 lanes, and it's on the water. And it does flood during a full moon high tide. The water laps right onto Commander Shea. So there's going to be a lot of upkeep. That's why we like to be notified every time. You know, I understand you guys can talk about the infrastructure, but we like to talk about the upkeep. That's what we pay for, and the safety. There's no lights there. There's not even sidewalks there. It's of a deep concern to us. That's why I'd ask, notify us. Every time there's a meeting and you guys want to fix this stuff, I kind of get that they're going to come here. I do. It's kind of a good place in some respects. Also, I understand it's zoned for that. So the thing is, how do we mitigate what's going to happen when they do come? And their trucks, 140 are coming out between 6 and 10 in the morning. That's not the Christmas rush. These are guys, contract drivers who don't know the area. And guess what? There's a 7 a.m. delivery, an 8 a.m. and a 10 a.m. delivery. People pay extra. So they're going to be rushing to get there on time through our neighborhood. This is of a concern to us. That's why we want to be included. And that's why we'd like to take a look. Did they go beyond their window of opportunity? Is it closed?
I have 2 responses to you.
Thanks.
One, Commander Shea Boulevard is a private way. The city has no responsibility for the maintenance or the upkeep thereof.
Okay.
So the owners who have rights in the roadway, in Commander Shea, it's their responsibility for the upkeep of the roadway. To the issue of notification, from the special permit, and again under Chapter 48, Section 9, the board is only required to notify abutters and abutters to abutters within 300 feet. The gentleman here has been tracking it since,
you know, and
and I think as he knows, I mean, our agenda is online, okay? And what we try to do, if something's being continued, is to a date certain. Either that or, you know, we'll send out, if somebody wants to know the date, we'll send it out. But I think the board makes an effort to try to notify if it's being continued to whatever that date is.
But just from my experience, the meetings are always on a Wednesday.
Correct.
And quite often, we don't find out it's been canceled, postponed, or whatever until Monday. That's late. It's late because there are people who have to make decisions on coming or not. I understand. So, if you were in my position, in our position, what would you do? Really, what would you do in our position?
Our agendas are online.
I understand.
And,
There's another private road.
I'm sorry?
There's another private road, not just Commander Shea. You know what, that's the no-name road. I understand that,
That no-name road has been an issue since 1980.
I know, but it's
And
owned,
when Marina Bay was first started to be developed and Jordan Marsh on the road.
but they don't own any. I understand two condo associations own, the small no
The
name.
road in between, that's
Yeah.
correct, my recollection. I go back a few years on that.
Yeah, so, I mean.
So as owners of that road, representing owners of that road, can we tell FedEx their trucks are not allowed down that road? It's a private, if they want to say Commander Shea Boulevard is a private road and we can do what we want, can we say our no-name road, which is essentially a driveway, can we say that is a private road and it's for non-commercial traffic only? We'll keep it open to the residents of the city, but we don't want FedEx trucks going down our driveway every morning. It's gonna be.
I'd have to read how it's, and again, I'm not an attorney.
Oh, I know, and I'm not trying, you've been, the board is actually, I don't want to beat up the board, but it's been great, in trying to at least keep us updated. FedEx is the enemy here. They are not just terrible at their job, they're terrible people. They manipulate the rules of the board to suit their own needs, to screw over the people that don't have a voice. Now, their original plan didn't have improvements to Commander Shea Boulevard, so that we weren't included as, drawing a blank on the legal name, but parties of interest, basically. But because in the new proposal, or at least we haven't seen the proposal, they just came down and did surveys, in our front yard. But the new proposal is literally not 300 feet, it's right across the street, it's an underhand toss to it. So if the proposal is changed, we should have been notified as parties of interest. Again, FedEx doesn't care. You guys are doing the best you can, and I appreciate that. But to stop FedEx, this is why I get back to, let's summarily reject them now. If they want to come back in 2 years, let them come back in 2 years. But we've wasted a year of our time already. Why should we bend over backwards to let FedEx screw over the citizens of Quincy?
Member Barrett.
There's nothing that I appreciate more as a member of this board than when people come out and address us directly. And so I appreciate you continuing to come and staying on top of it, and you as well, sir, raising these issues. But and because of that, I think that you guys deserve to understand why I'm about to vote the way that I'm about to vote. And that is because in the 7 years that I've been on this board, applicants that have acted in the exact same way that FedEx has acted, we have not penalized them by acting accordingly. And there's nothing that's been brought to our attention that they've been acting with less than good faith based on what we've seen. So I will, in a moment, vote to allow them to withdraw the application and not impose punitive penalties on them as suggested. But that being said, we hope that when the application does come back before us, that we're able to address these substantive issues that you're raising. But I think it's premature to get into any of these issues right now. I think there's one more comment, but I just want to be clear. We're not going to talk about the actual substance of the application at all, because it's not before us. And any of my other board members can weigh in if they're going to view this differently, but I am going to vote to allow them, based on our precedent in treating everybody uniformly, whether they're a big developer or a small one, and allow them to withdraw their application without prejudice.
I understand. What if, I don't know if it's a issue, what if
Oh,
it is?
and to your point,
Yes.
if the city, and I do not act as an attorney for this board, if the city finds out that there was any sort of impropriety in the process,
Yes.
they will advise us about
Whether, no matter what you vote tonight, if they had asked for too many suspensions and too many postponements, they would advise you, you can't give them, you can't allow that.
That's my understanding, is that if we act out of line tonight, we will be...
Well, mistakenly out of
correct.
line, not purposely out of line.
Exactly.
All right. Where do I go to the city to figure this out? Who do I speak to in the city?
Well, I'd just add that this matter was opened on January 27th and then continued to March 9th. Continued off of March 9th to June 8th, so that's 3. And then it was, from there, continued, again, these no testimony, to September 14th. At that meeting, the applicant was advised of the issues the board had.
Okay.
We have a requirement to open a public hearing by the time we reach it. So that's what was done in January. Once it enters into continuances, that can occur for a period of time. I'm not aware of any cap limit. It's a comfort level of the board, whether the applicant is curing the issues that are preventing him from providing testimony.
I got you.
So I think both of you gentlemen identified, one of the major issues here, which is the Commander Shea Boulevard as a private way. And as proposed to handle FedEx trucks, they needed to provide more information. That hasn't come. Whether your guys are the condo associations have ownership in some of that roadway network, that remains to be seen. The city has not received any official information to update us on that application. So based off of the last meeting in September, where we said either come forward with information or withdraw, we received the withdrawal notice. So that would have been 4 meetings to this one.
But who would I, thanks, I appreciate it.
That would be the city solicitor's office.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for.
Ma'am?
Excellent.
My name is Pat Desmond, and I also live at 90 Quincy Shore Drive, and I'm chair of trustees right now. I want to point out that besides the 2 owners you've already heard for it, there are 5 other owners in this audience, maybe it might be 6, I'm not sure. But I think that the fact that people have been coming, this is not the first time people have shown up and sat quietly. It's the first time a lot of us have said, we've got to stop those 16-wheelers on that small, no-name road that has drainage that is totally collapsed, and every time there's a storm, there's more trouble. The 16-wheelers are causing trouble. We don't have to close that road to every truck, but we should be putting weight limits on it and keep those trucks out. And we would like the city to help us. I know that we don't have and Edgewater roads have. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak on this? Could I speak?
One thing, please.
How you doing? John Orderfield, 62 Bramwell Road. I'm going to say right now that I think this is a violation of the open public meeting laws. I had talked to Mr. Fatsis earlier. I was at that September meeting. At the September meeting, Mr. Callahan made a motion to add something to it that they had to come back in the October meeting and make a presentation. So they did have an opportunity to withdraw, but it should have been at the October meeting. None of these poor people should even have to be here tonight. This is not fair. This is not the proper way things are advertised. We shouldn't even be listening to this tonight. It should not be on the agenda. It was continued. There's video proof of this. And, bottom line is that these people don't want it in the neighborhood, and it seems like FedEx sort of wrecked it themselves. It's a company out in Utah that owns the building. They came here before, they wanted to put a big giant sign on the building. They withdrew that one earlier too. This is the second time they've withdrawn something, but I don't understand that if we're at a meeting in September and you say it's continued to October. I was at the October meeting, and when that didn't happen, I knew something weird was gonna happen that's happening tonight. I don't think you should be listening to this, and if you do vote on this, I will, do a violation thing. I've been studying how I can do a violation. You'll have to go back on vote on this again, and then there will be a chance maybe that they will have to wait 2 years. So this should, like I said, this should be, I thought it died. I thought the fact that they didn't come here in October meant that it was denied. Okay, so it should not be able to be withdrawn. And let's say if it was being withdrawn tonight, then Attorney Hernandez should be up here right now. I don't understand that. I really wish the attorneys, if they want to withdraw something, at least would come up here in person. Many of the times they do, but sometimes they don't, and that's disrespectful to the people that live in Quincy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir.
My name is Dennis Sullivan. I live at 90 Quincy Shore Drive. And I just wanted, I know you're not dealing with the merits of the case right now. I just wanted to point out some of the things that have already been said, that what you're looking at a community here with children and with seniors who are crossing that road, and you're asking to put in there 40 vehicles per hour and tractor trailer trucks 24 hours a day on a one-way, one-lane roadway. It's already dangerous down there now, and it's only gonna add to that. And our issue is a lot more. We've been told that FedEx has a right to develop, and I understand that. I have a right to leave my front door open, but that does not mean it's a good idea, and neither does the FedEx idea. I took a GoPro camera on a Thursday at 7:15. I was at the beginning of the bridge in Neponset. It took me half an hour with the present traffic to go over there, and that's available to the committee members if you'd like to see it. You have to cross over 2 lanes with those vehicles coming onto the bridge. It's going to create a tremendous traffic jam, tremendous. And then there's talk, I understand, of a throughway from 341 units that are on Marina Bay to new apartments, as well as an 800 vehicle parking spot to come straight onto Commander Shea Boulevard. And that's impossible. I don't think there's anybody here that if that were recommended for your community, that you would say that's a great idea. I don't think anybody would say that. And it's not a great idea for us. We'd like to get some input in this. We've never, ever, ever been contacted about any of this, none of it. But I understand from going to one meeting that there had been some contact. Now, I don't think, since we're the neighborhood that's predominantly impacted with this, that we should have been excluded from this. We should be, and I'd like you to take out one thing. If this is not a bad idea, let's say it's not a bad idea, why wouldn't it make sense to share the burden? Certainly, those vans are allowed on Quincy Shore Drive, not the tractor trailers, but the vans are, the delivery vans. If, at the least, you can consider splitting that up. We get 20 an hour, they get 20 an hour. Shift it off to Squantum, down to Quincy Shore Drive, coming out the other way. That makes reasonable sense. If it's all right for us and it's a great idea, then let's share the great idea. Let's give it to Marina Bay as well. We just don't want to be the only neighborhood impacted like that. I'll wait for the rest of the meeting later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none. The request was to allow the applicant to withdraw their application at this time.
Motion stands.
Motion's been made to allow the application to be withdrawn at this time. Is there a second to it?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, the next item, let me just do one thing before, which I should have done before. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of a public meeting and may transmit the meeting through any media. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present deemed acknowledgeable and permissible. The only thing that the chair would ask and the board would ask is that if there is a request from the audience, that the person come forward, as you've already seen, identify themselves before they speak. Thank you. Okay, we have a continued public hearing for 23 and 31 Bridge Street, site plan special permit, planning board page 2016-12, continued from the August 24, 2016 meeting. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Edward Fleming. I'm here on behalf of the Boston Property Development LLC. I'm joined tonight by Christian Greenwood and John Hansen from Boston Property Development, and also Darth Hagman Brown from Embark Studios. As you know, and as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is a continuation from initial presentation that was made on August 24th regarding the property at 23 and 31 Bridge Street. At that time, we made full presentation of the proposal and described and explained the proposal in detail at that time. But I'd like to just briefly kind of overview a couple of things. First of all, this Boston property is a development, is a Quincy-based real estate development company. And as we talked about last time, they've been involved in a couple of different projects in Quincy in this area. They completed the Marymount Road project and then presently constructing the Temple Bethel building, the 53 units at the Temple Bethel building. This subject site is as 23 and 31 Bridge Street, consists of 2 parcels of land, about 30,828 square feet. And it's also zoned in Business C, like the Temple Bethel building, and it allows for multifamily development, and that's what's being proposed here tonight. The initial presentation that we made on the 24th of August detailed a proposal that included a 6-story building, consisting of 60 residential units, and with garage parking underneath the building, 3 levels, for a total of 98 parking spaces. During that meeting and after the meeting, the board requested that we, and from comments that were raised by the National Park Service, I know Mary Ann Pete's here again tonight, the board asked us to do 2 things. To continue our discussions with the National Park Service to ensure that the Parks Service's concerns were appropriately addressed regarding the architectural impact that the building would have on the National Park site, and also to contact and work with the MBTA because of the close proximity of the development to the MBTA line, and to discuss those impacts and address any concerns that they may have. Since that meeting, we've also received a letter from the Hospital Hill Association, which the planning board forwarded it to us, which also raised similar types of questions that the National Park Service raised. That being specifically height of the building, the visual impact of the building on the National Park Service. As many of you know, that the Hospital Hill Association represents the Hospital Hill neighborhood, essentially across the street in the Adams Street area. So they were concerned also about the height of the building and the visual impact of the building on the National Park, and raised questions about traffic and runoff. And as the board knows, this project, like every other project, is undergoing the review of an independent peer review engineer who is responsible for addressing issues related to traffic and runoff. And through the development team, the applicant is addressing those matters as well. But what we wanted to do tonight, Mr. Chairman and members, is to really just highlight some of the changes that we've made to the architectural plans. And will really be limited to the architectural type of changes that we're making to the plans, specifically to address the issues raised by the National Park Service and the Hospital Hill Association. We have, however, also had numerous meetings with Mary Ann Peak and the National Park Service, and actually stood on their site and took visuals from their site of what the building would look like. And Dr. Hagan will show you some visuals of what the site will look like from the National Park Service site, to ensure that we're making changes that are going to lessen the impact to the National Park, which also addresses the Hospital Hill Association's issues. And we've also reached out to the MBTA and received from the MBTA an application form that they requested that we fill out and file with them. And although that form deals with work on their site, because I think they anticipated that we were going to be looking for some kind of an easement or a work area on their site, which we are not doing, we still forwarded that application and had communication with the MBTA. And they indicated to us that it would be about a 30 to 45-day window for them to review our application and have a discussion. So the good news is that there's some level of communication, and we're hopeful that by the time we're here again at the next meeting in December, which we understand this matter will be continued once again after tonight's meeting, that we'll have some answers to those concerns and questions as well. So without any further presentation from me, I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Brown to talk about the proposal and the details of the changes. And then we'll address any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. D'Artagnan Brown, architect from New York. So just by way of orientation, to remind you of our site, Newport Ave, located along here. This is Bridge Street. Outlined in red is our site, comprising of 23 to 31 Bridge Street. And across from the MBTA tracks and Newport Ave is the Adams Mansion that Ed is mentioning. So part of the ongoing dialogue that our office has had with Ed and the National Park Service is the view from the Adams Mansion back to our site. So what we had originally proposed, just to clarify, was a 5-story building with a small 6-story extension on the top to get out to the roof. And the concern here was just the open sky from the mansion looking back to our building. We went through a couple iterations. I was actually looking at removing a section of the building down here, but keeping the height. And I think the concern around this was the verticality of this and kind of the open sky imbalance along the view corridor here. So what we've ultimately arrived at, we've heard as a preference for both parties is being able to essentially take off the whole wing along the 5th floor, which I'll show you a little bit more in plan and section, from about this point on to the end of the building, and this section here pushing back about 10 feet, steps back another 10 feet here. And the goal of this alteration to the design is to keep kind of a horizontal aspect, open sky, again from the view looking out towards the site. Just by way of orientation on the plan along Bridge Street here, kind of working with that and kind of rejiggering the structure of the building, we'll have about 20 parking spaces on the surface lot. As mentioned before, the goal was to have a landscape courtyard. Residents of the building would walk through. There'd be an open lobby that looked out onto the green, lush green area in the back, and then a secondary ramp that would bring you down to parking. Your parking house, kind of working with the topography of the grade, which I'll show you in section, to house the balance of 50 spaces. So between the 20 on the surface lot, next slide, please. 20 here, 50 in the basement, we're at 70 with the ability to add another 10 for across the street on a site that our client also owns. So once you get into the building, kind of the central core, common amenities, range of unit sizes, and then working through the building, just a range of unit mixes from a combination of the of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. We can get into that, sorry, two plus bedroom units, and we can get into that if it's needed. I think if we go up to the 5th floor, the main thing that we're showing here is, again, along the Newport Ave and the BAT tracks. You can see that we've pushed this section of the building back, stepped it back as here, and also taken out this entire wing, about 3,600 square feet along that length of the building. The next section here is that internal courtyard. So this is the view coming up on Bridge Street here. You can see the topography of the building sloping down, how we're slotting in the parking, kind of the open view out to the green space. And then this is the full section in its entirety that's been taken out. I think we go to the next one. Along the Newport Ave, you can see this section is all what's been removed. This has been pushed back. We're also heard and have noted on here that we'll remove the large signage band that we had previously proposed on this upper cornice. Along the Bridge Street elevation, you can see here again this section of the wing cut off, and what you see is much further beyond that section of the building. Looking again on, this is on the back half of the property and looking back towards the building, so the Adams Mansion would be down towards the right. Again, this section of the building cut back and that wing taken off. That's it. Thank you.
Any questions, board? So the number of units stay the same?
The number of units have stayed the same. That's something we're working internally throughout the unit plan, but we're still at 60.
But you now have 20 surface parking spaces?
20 surface, correct, 20 surface parking, 50 in the garage. So we're at 70 with the ability to go 80 across the street. To add another 10 across the street to be at 80 spots.
So the original plan had how many on the street, 50, on the surface, 15?
It had the same 20, but we had a bit of a deeper garage, trying to dig in another layer. And I think working with removing a large section of the top floor, balancing the cost of digging further down into the site, we're coming in at the 80 spots.
So you now have, but you now, under this plan, you have surface parking. which you didn't have in the original.
There was initially
We-
service parking.
We had the
within
same set of parking over there.
That remained, that was there as well, and that's a little, that's shaded or,
Yeah, and I have the old presentation that helps to pull it up, but we did have this dual driveway with the idea that this was one same kind of configuration here for the service parking.
that's partially, that's under the building. It's under the building,
Yeah,
but it's actually viewable from the street level, so it's accessible from the street level.
Correct. Actually, if you don't mind going back. So you can see right here, this is the building above, so majority of that surface parking is covered. Because of the landscaping and the change in grade here, we actually go to the earlier, you can see that would all be buffered behind that zone because the residential comes down to about here, and below that, kind of partially covered, actually mostly covered by the building is where the parking is.
And as you can see or identify from this, and although with the red markers, that's the roof line that was previously proposed, and now it's down significantly, where it will be hidden by the mature growth on that side of the tracks. And we've talked about not interfering at all with that mature growth. That mature growth is actually on the MBTA parcel. It's on the opposite, not on our land. And we've reviewed that with the National Park Service, some evergreen and some non-evergreen growth. But that during the season where the National Park Service is primarily in operation during the spring and the summer seasons, that will be well grown and shade majority of that building, certainly at the reduced height. So that's essentially our presentation for tonight. We just wanted to share those modifications with the plans. That it does impact the parking because the parking numbers have changed from the 96, I think, that we had initially proposed, to 70 on site and with an additional 10 spaces across the street. There was some other modification of parking, but I think that's how we're going to work from those numbers right now, and we'll continue to work with the department on those matters. But we wanted to share these with you. We wanted the Hospital Hill Association, if they're here tonight, to also to hear that response to their letter of concern as well. We still know that there were other issues and concerns raised regarding traffic and drainage that we're continuing to work on. As the board may remember, we hired Jack Gillen, who's working with us as a traffic engineer on this proposal, who's prepared the traffic report that's been reviewed by the independent traffic review professionals. And we've also, and Jim Burke is here also, who's been working on the drainage system, and he's shared his revised provisions with Jerry Preble from Niels and Thomas, and we're working through those comments and concerns as well. We're not really prepared to answer any additional comments right now on those matters. But we know that Hospital Hill Association raised those concerns, so we're continuing to look.
If I could, Council's alluded to this letter 3 times, so I'm going to read it into the record. This is a copy of a letter that was sent to both Councilor Hughes and Councilor Forrest, and also Director Fetzes. It's come to the attention of the Hospital Hill Neighborhood Association, HNA, that there is a proposal for development of approximately 65 residential units, several stories in height at 23 to 31 Bridge Street. Given the size and the scope of the project, we are concerned that the details of this project were not shared with us prior to the planning board meeting next week on October 19th. We would greatly appreciate your working with us to set up a question and answer presentation from the developer to our group. Councilor Forrest, do you have a similar neighborhood organization that you would like to invite to this community meeting? If so, we welcome their participation in this proposed presentation. Our concerns include, but not limited to, the following: height of the structure, traffic and road conditions, visual impacts, including Adams National Park, runoff of water issues, impact of affordable housing units, green space, including maintaining old growth trees. We greatly appreciate your suggesting a day and time, or several days and times that would work. Our next scheduled HANA meeting is Tuesday, November 15th, 7 p.m. at the Neighborhood Club, if that works for you. Please feel free to invite any member of the City of Quincy staff who touched on the above issues or any other issues you deem relevant as it would be extremely helpful to have staff in attendance to address the suggested topics. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to hearing from you. Warm regards, the Hospital Hill Neighborhood Association. And I think as Council Fleming's represented, I know there were representatives of the neighborhood from the association.
If I may,
Do you want to speak?
may I?
Sure, you can, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. Thank you very much for this. I can see you've made some significant changes. But I'd like to specifically address that picture. I'm glad it's still up there. I can see you've come down the one story. The issue I'd like to also point out to you folks, and Mary Ann is here, and she will verify that there's actually a tree that's been taken down right where that picture is. Okay? You can't see the tree because the tree's actually in back. Now, if you take that same picture from the back door of the house, you will see approximately 2 more stories than what you're seeing now, just because of the angle of the camera. So when the visitors come around the corner from the gardens and they see that building, they were going to see 4 stories. Now they're going to see 3 stories. Okay, you're going to look right over those garages. The way the angle of that camera is, okay, those garages block a significantly more area of that building than if you took the picture back, another 30 or 40 feet closer to the building. So as you're I'd suggest if you would take another picture. When you're coming around the corner of the house, take this same picture and then compare the two. And you might understand some of the issues that the neighborhood and the Park Service might have. Okay? So, and I don't know I have a funny feeling what it does to your project, so, but I suggest that you do that. Okay. Secondly, I am an officer of the HHNA group, and as you just heard, we do have a meeting Tuesday at 7 o'clock, the Neighborhood Club. If you'd like to join us and speak with us, we'd be more than happy to have you there. Short notice, etc. If you can make it, we're going to be there. Okay? Thank you very much.
You identify yourself for me, sir?
Yes, my name is Will Smith. I live at 15 Glendale Road. As I said, I'm an officer of the HHNA Neighborhood Association. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Anybody else wants to speak? I'm going to ask the board's, Counselor, I didn't see you there, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Good evening.
You were hiding.
Again, Mario Forrest, Ward 1 Counselor, frequent flyer at planning board meetings. Just by show of hands in the audience, who's here for the Bridge Street project? And of that, who's here that's a Ward 1 resident?
Don't what?
Ward 1 residents, okay. I just, just for clarification, because it was referenced, this is the second submission for this specific address in the original application was withdrawn without prejudice. I just want to be very clear for the record that Councilor Hughes and I, in initial of the first application, as well as this one, held a community meeting. So, Will, I understand, I just wanted to remember we held a community meetings with an expanded mailing list that we were willing to provide, and as well as I have every single project document that's been provided to me, and Sue, you're terrific getting all the emails out, posted at marioforest.com. So I really feel like communication of what documentation as the project's been going forth, kind of, Kirsten and I share the territory on this one. So we've really been able to push that out as well as do follow-ups on social media. So I just want for the record to be clear about community outreach and meeting. Kirsten and I have put in a lot of effort on this specific address, and now this is it, round 2. So I appreciate the feedback, keeping us posted. I haven't seen the recent updates of the submission. I appreciate the presentation tonight, but I just wanted to clarify for the record what the involvement has been with the ward level and the community outreach, because it's substantial. So I'm unable to attend November 15th, 2 neighborhood meetings and the zoning board. So triple header already. I wish I could be there. I'm not sure if Kristen will be there on the 15th, but I will make sure she is aware of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Can I say one thing? Can I say one thing?
Go ahead, John.
John Rutherford, 62 Grand Mall Road. I just want to let the I taped that meeting, so that neighborhood meeting, go to QuincyTaxpayers.com, you can see that meeting. They talked about 60 units there. This is too dense. They didn't get rid of any of the density. I mean, it's just way too dense. It needs to be, it's too big. I really don't see what they did to make it better at all. So, I mean, there's nothing that's been mitigated to get this better. This has to be way smaller than this project currently is. It's technically in Ward 5, and my issue is on their street, you cannot drive up that street on the side. And on Bridge Street, it's not big enough for two-way traffic. So before you go ahead and issue a project to go ahead, you have to make no parking on those streets. It's not safe. I mean, there's a serious issue of just overcrowding there. You're adding too much. 60 units there is totally ridiculous. They either cut the project in half or it gets denied. It's very simple. Time to stand up for the people. I'm tired of listening to bad project after bad project. You know, if you look at the project, it's like developers are sort of calling the shots in the city of Quincy instead of the residents who have lived here our whole lives, and this is just, I'm just tired of listening to this time and time again. They have to, this is very disappointing that they didn't get rid of any of the units and they just moved stuff around and maybe took like a trick picture from what someone just said. So basically, it's up to the community to get involved, and I'm going to be involved in this heavily from beginning to the end. So I just hope that, you know, if it goes at 60, I'm going to fight this till the very end. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the wishes of the board? We have a revision to the plan, which has not undergone any review, or very limited review. Wishes of the...
Can I comment?
Excuse me?
Are you stopping the opportunity for...
No, I'm asking my board members for a recommendation,
Thank you
sir.
for clarification.
I would love to hear from the Park Service if they have.
Okay, so let's just open it up then. That answers that question. Marianne, you want to speak?
Well, I can wait.
No, speak.
You know, I don't have a problem with that. Good evening, I'm Mary Ann Peter with the National Park Service, Adams National Historic Park. And I appreciate really the work of Boston Properties, who have been very attentive to work with us to see what resolutions we could collaborate on, you know, or work on so that it was a viable project. So that's basically where we are. It's a work in progress. And it's not clear to me, with Margaret, we can kind of, you know, talk about when that community meeting was, because unless it related to 999, I don't remember that meeting. This was one I missed. It would have been an important one to be at. And how I missed it, you know, might have been not being on Facebook or whatever. So I'll have to be more clear about, you know, how those things were done. Because when it impacts the Adams National Historic Park, it's my responsibility, you know, to look at, you know, the future and how we represent the historical site with the view shed and with the skyscape. It's not all about, you know, development at the ground level. It's when you look up and how it impacts the historic integrity of the area. Now, trees are wonderful, and if you could hide everything behind the trees, I would be happy. I'm not here about density, although I know that's an issue with neighborhoods. I'm not here about services that will need to be provided to these people. I'm really here about how it impacts the view shed and the interpretation of the historic site. Is there a possibility, and this particular drawing that was one of the original drawings, I asked them to make because I knew it was going to impact the site. I just didn't know at what level. So this was one of the very first renderings as to what they were proposing. So visual is good, it's important. It helps you have a sense of permanency, because we're making a decision here from now in perpetuity. This building will last a whole lot longer than me and many others. So we want to make the right decisions so that it will be attractive for the community and for the historic site. So when we looked at that, we worked with Boston Properties, and they created another rendering of the building. And what I'm asking now is, the units haven't changed. You talked about landscape and the front and how you're creating this green environment. What about moving the building more toward 999 so that you're moving it away from the historic scene, so that it's more dense in that area, and giving up that little landscape to the buildings, because it's an apartment building. It's not, the landscape can be contributing to it, but would you rather have units in that green area entrance and the green bordering the railroad tracks or the ave side? So you would have more green space on the historic site side and then more building on the 999 side where it's built and developed anyway. I don't know if it's an option, but if you've got that extra space there, maybe you can move it a little further back. The other thing is that when we look at protecting our historic neighborhood and the historic Adams Street, the neighbors have been very supportive in trying to work with community to make good, sound decisions for the future. And they requested a meeting, and it's my recommendation that they have that opportunity to meet with Boston Properties to have some input into the project so that it's a better project as a result of everybody understanding why it has to happen and that they've taken every consideration to make it the best it can possibly be. We know it's important for Boston Properties to advertise that their property is overlooking the Adams National Historical Park. That's a real driver for those top buildings there. That's a plus for them. It's just not so much a plus for us to be looking at them. It's more of a plus for them to be looking out over us. If you have to give that up for your marketing, the buildings, the apartments are still going to sell if they were pushed back a little bit and they didn't have such a grand view. It's just a thought, but my responsibility is to protect the Adams National Historical Park and the view shed in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else wishes to speak? I'm sorry.
Actually, just to that point, I'm already on record making a statement, but I don't think that I can underscore enough how important the national site is to our city. And so this particular board member is going to defer greatly to the national park system and their comfort with the eventual look of the project. So I'd advise the applicant to work with them outside of the confines of this meeting and make sure that when the proposal is ready to go forward to us again, that there's alignment. Because that's going to weigh heavily on my vote to approve this project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any other board member? Okay. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Just come up and identify yourself.
Willis Hanson, 10 Edgewood Circle. I live nearby. First off, this is in the historical district. Next, I'm not going to call that a trick photo, but I'm sure enough of you have driven up and down Newport to know that they're siting that on a rise. That's going to be a very prominent building at that point, both for drivers and people looking out. Next, and the proponents can clarify this. The talk about taking a level off, are you taking off a whole floor, or is my read of the other drawings, what you're doing is you're taking a step back? In other words, you're taking out a chunk of the top floor, and it's going to be back, but the top floor is going to continue away from the Adams Historical Society. Is that?
Can I answer that?
That's what I asked.
Right. So this section of the building, this wing of the building coming along here, this is the MBTA tracks. From here to here, it's been removed in its entirety. From here to here, it's been stepped back. So there are sections of it that are completely taken off. This section is remaining as is because that is further away from the Adams Mansion. So from here to here, it's about 10 feet back, 10 feet back, where it used to be out towards the edge like we have here. So that's been opened up, and then this is all been taken out.
So in other words, my read was fairly correct. You're taking some mass off the top, but you're not mitigating it as much as you might think. Especially because, again, this is on a rise. Next, in terms of density, and these are approximations, so bear with me, it's about 20% more units than what's at 999 on about half the parcel. That's a lot of stuff. It's already been addressed how the roadways and other accesses are so. Next, we look at the design. Go back to remember, this is a historical district. As near as I can see from the renderings, the basic plan, design ethos, whatever you want to call it, aesthetics, is similar to 999, which is at the end of the day, basically a generic composite sided, a little bit of brick, a little bit of faux lap strapping, that sort of thing, to move around some things to kind of disguise it. It's generic stuff that you can see in any burg, anywhere in eastern Massachusetts, if not anywhere up and down the East Coast. It's incongruous. Next, if we look back at what the proponent has done previously, the 999 project was originally presented to be condos. They were talking about putting a roof on the top, pool on the top. They were going to put a lot. They were going to upgrade the exterior with clapboard types, hardy board things, and a few other things to make it more congruous to the neighborhood, which is red brick, clapboard houses, that sort of thing. Didn't happen. And now it's apartments. And then if we go back to One Marymount, there were all kinds of things about how they came up with getting that thing to have parking and meet the sufficient number. Going back to this project, we're talking the same number of units and about 20 fewer parking spaces, from my understanding of your presentation. It might be a few high, it might be a few low. In a neighborhood that's tight. And oh, by the way, right on top of the tracks. I know you can do a lot of stuff with soundproofing, but who wants to live next to tracks that have got trains going up and down from 5 in the morning till midnight? Almost every day of the week, 365 days out of the year. It's outsized, it's inappropriate, it's excessive. Finally, in terms of pressure upon the city to see this happen, I hate to have to bring this up, but I looked at OCPF campaign contribution records, and the proponent has thrown close to $28,000 to city officials, including the biggest checks that Ward 1 councilors have seen in the last 2 years. Now, you could certainly make donations. Money is considered speech according to the Supreme Court and everything else, but it just doesn't look right, especially with a building that just doesn't look right for that setting. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak on the issue?
My name's Jocelyn Segni. I live at 85 Monroe Road here in Quincy. And I just wanted to address 2 points. Number one was with respect to the Park Service. And I agree so much. This is a tremendous resource that we have here in the city of Quincy. And I really feel it's so important to protect it in totality. That means the yard, the surrounding areas, not just the house itself, but the view, just the whole thing. This is something that we're so lucky to have. People come from all over, they contribute to the economy when they come over, so I think it's so important to preserve it. And we have this one project here in front of us, and I'm concerned that this is going to be sort of a slippery slope kind of thing. There are a lot of other 2- and 3-family houses that it seems to me that many projects are taking down and putting up apartment buildings or condos or whatever. And if we don't look at this really carefully and maintain the viewscape, if you will, then other buildings will come along and you'll have to treat them the same way. And pretty soon the Park Service is going to be surrounded by buildings that do interfere with that viewscape. So I really would encourage everyone to really look very carefully at this. I see the adjustments that have been made, but I just don't see that they're really adequate at this point. My other issue is with respect to the density, and I think my fellow resident here has addressed that. you know, I live very close to this. That building looks huge. The parking in that area is awful right now. And it's not even a space per unit. And maybe you say you don't need that because you're close to a subway station and people aren't going to want to, everyone's not going to have cars. People are going to have cars. They're all going to have cars. A lot of them are, it's not going to just be one person living in these units. People have girlfriends, people are married, people have 2 cars. There's going to be a tremendous burden on this whole area. In addition, I don't know, maybe this has been covered already, but is it going to cost extra for people to park underground? Is it going to be more expensive? We've had that issue before in the city. If it's more expensive, if residents have to pay extra money, they're not going to pay surrounding neighborhoods to park their cars because they're not going to want to pay that money. So again, I don't know if that's been addressed yet. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Anyone else wishes to speak?
Mr. Chairman, just one comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I completely agree with the sentiment that the Adams space, the national park there is a critical jewel for the city. So I agree that we really need to pay great attention to that. My question is just about signage, and that's one of the components of the approval. So I guess in future, or perhaps you could see just the rendering of what the building would look like with the signage from the Adams house, for instance. Would it look like a big billboard?
We removed the signage from that.
Okay, because in here it still has the signage. There's a
on the original proposal.
So you have removed the signage.
And we will, and these plans came together rather quickly, and that's why we're presenting them tonight, but we will provide the board with the rendering plans.
Thank you.
I think Glenn noted up here, it says remove signage, and that was the area we had it in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments from the board? All right, I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until our December 14th.
I just have
go ahead.
one comment to the applicant is, one thing that I'll look forward to hearing is, sometimes you look at projects in isolation, and I think in this particular area, we need to look at it in the aggregate of what's happening there. So when we talk about traffic, which I know you're not ready to address tonight, I really want to focus on the synagogue project, the Central Middle School project, and this project, all coming together at the same time, and what that means. So I just want to put everyone on notice that that's going to be part of what I want to talk about next time.
Thank you. I have a question to the applicant, the applicant's representative. I understand the zoning, I understand the business C. Was there any need for any zoning relief?
There is some setback relief requested. To go to John's comment about density, this is actually 500 square feet per unit, which is what business C requires for density. So we're not asking for density relief. We are, however, because of the way the lot is shaped and the topography that's associated with it, asking for some relief for setback and things of that nature. And I'll have a detailed list on the application. I believe it's spelled out, the detailed list of the variances that we are requesting. And we're on before the Zoning Board of Appeals that we've continued, and we'll probably continue again now that this matter is being continued, so that we'll address the planning board's concerns and comments first before we go to the zoning.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to continue this public hearing to December 14th, 2016? So a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
So for public, this will be continued at our December 14th public hearing. While they're separate, while they're taking everything down, the next item, and we'll wait, is for 151 Hancock Street. Okay, public hearing for 151 Hancock Street, site plan / special permit, planning board case 2016-13, which was delayed opening on October 19, 2016 due to a quorum requirement. In accordance with provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, the Quincy Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 19th at 8:10 p.m. In the first floor Boards and Commissions Room, Quincy City Hall, 1305 Hancock Street, on the application of 143 and 151 Hancock Street Realty Trust, James J. Sullivan trustee, 18 Oliver Road, Plymouth, Mass. 02360. For site plan review under Quincy zoning, Title 17, Section 9.5, site plan review and a special permit under Section 5.1.17, parking waiver. The applicant proposes the construction of a new 4-story, 20-unit residential development with 29 off-street parking spaces. The applicant also proposes landscaping, drainage, and other site modifications. The property contains 13,325 plus square feet of land and is located at 151 Hancock Street. The subject property is located within the Business C zoning district and is shown in Assessors Plan 6163, Plot 4 and Map 6163, Plot 5. Council.
Good evening. My name is William Keener. I'm here on behalf of Paul Adamson for 151 Hancock Street. This meeting would continue due to a lack of a quorum last time. We had proposed back in the day 24 units, but then with the parking issues from recent meetings with you gentlemen, we redid it. So it's been in the making for quite a while. We now have 20 units with 30 spots. So we're actually at the 1.5 for the parking spots. They're all the 2-bedroom units, very similar to the ones that we had before on the old Ritz and the Clay Chevrolet, the same architect, similar designs, and I'll now turn it over to Tim Johnson. He's the architect. He can explain the details of the changes that were made.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tim Johnson, project architect. And as Mr. Keener, our project attorney, was saying, we are proposing on a 13,325 square foot parcel, which is in the Business C zoning district, 4-story building with 20 spaces and 30 parking spaces. The site is located on the corner of Myrtle and Hancock, and where Hancock crosses the end of the PA line. This is our target site right there. As Bill said, these will be 2-bedroom, 2-bath units, and an elevator will service all floors. I'll talk a little bit about how we laid out the building because Hancock Street is a busy street. We have 2 garage entrances. This is Hancock, and we have 1 garage entrance off Hancock. It's a 16-foot wide door, and so we can have traffic going in and out at the same time. And we have our second garage door off Myrtle Street. Also off Myrtle Street is where our trash is located. So any trash pickup would be taken off Myrtle Street and not on Hancock Street. The main entrance of the building, handicap accessible entrance, is off Hancock, but we also have a secondary entrance off Myrtle Street. So we have 29 car garage, and we have 1 space here for deliveries for a total of 30 spaces. This is a view of the building looking south. This is Myrtle Street, Hancock Street. This is a view of the building looking north. We are also, so we're at 1.5 space per dwelling unit. And this will also be built to the stretch energy code, which is 20% more energy efficient than the current code. And we follow the dark sky initiative. All exterior lighting will be downlit and shielded to minimize light pollution. And our landscape architect, Kate Oranchak, is working with the Parks and Forestry Department on picking the appropriate trees, which will be planted in front of the building. That's a quick overview. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Joyce, who is our civil engineer.
I didn't see Ian Kane here. We did have a neighborhood meeting. It was attended by 3 people. Just to let you know. I didn't see Council Kane here tonight. But I just want to let you know we did have a neighborhood meeting at the Adams Inn several months ago.
Honorable Barry has questions.
Yes, quick question. So in this view right here, I don't know what you call these stairwells that come up. Is there a roof deck?
Right now, we are proposing a common roof deck. Yes. I apologize. Yes. All the units will have small balconies, but right now we do have a common roof deck accessed by 2 head houses.
And those stairwells would not be viewable from Hancock Street?
That's right.
You're across the street
Right.
looking
So these are the views with the head houses as part of the 3D model. And I can see a little bit over here, but from the street, we don't see the head houses.
Okay. And do you have a view from the neighborhood behind the tracks, from the playground and the neighborhood back on?
Across the railroad tracks?
Yes.
No, but we can generate that. We have the 3D model in the site called.
Can you describe it to me? Are they going to be looking at a lot of windows and a nice facade?
Well, this is really the view you're going to see from the playground.
Okay, so it'll be the same. It won't just be a big wall that they're going to be looking at.
And this is across the street as well, so I don't know how much view they have when they're so far down. Just the angle of it going across, might be difficult to see, but if it is, it's only 4 stories. You might just see a bit of the top of it. And there are other big buildings across the street.
Oh, I realize that,
Yeah.
but
No,
I'm trying to picture what that neighborhood is going to be looking at, because I hate being surprised when things go up in Quincy and it's a big wall. And I go, geez, I really wish that we had known that there was going to be a big wall.
Well, the color views you have of this is what you'll be seeing from the front.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Can I just ask, before Mr. Joyce comes up, Bill, do you need any zoning relief?
No, Project J. Duker, and because of where the lines are, where the other buildings are on there already, it should be just a finding without going in front of the board.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My name is Michael Joyce with Joyce Consulting Group, the civil engineers for the project. I'm just going to touch briefly on the existing conditions. As Tim and Attorney Keener mentioned, this site's at the intersection of Hancock Street and Myrtle Street. There's an existing single-family home at the corner, a detached garage, and directly next door, the rectangular lot, there's a what looks like it's a commercial building now. I believe it's an old attorney's office, probably a converted residential building with a parking area on the side. No current stormwater improvements on the site. As Tim had mentioned, we're proposing a 20-unit residential building. Stormwater design meets the Mass Stormwater Handbook. There'll be no increase in runoff from the site. Basically, the majority of the impervious area on the site is rooftop. It'll be directed to leaching 12 4x4 precast leaching galleys. Those will fill up, overflow to an outlet control structure, so will outlet to the city drainage system. Any surface runoff from the parking area in the rear will be collected by a deep sump catch basin, treated and overflowed to the infiltration system. Be all new concrete sidewalks along the front of the property. The curbs will be reset. The traffic engineer requested that we restripe the walkway, the crosswalks, and also restripe the street. Proposing new sewer services, new fire and water, new electric. Site work will be fairly minimal. The majority of the site is going to be the proposed structure. I think that's about the extent of it. Unless you have any questions for me?
Board members, any questions? None?
Questions?
Oh, go ahead. Member Callahan.
For the department, I believe we've approved 2 other projects, one directly across the street and one between Myrtle and Walnut, maybe a year and a half ago. Do we know the status of that? I don't think either of those are working ground.
The Attorney Keener represented one of them. Both of them?
Yeah, the old Boston Pasta, that was just purchased, that was sold by Reno, the old owner. He sold it to a developer from Boston, and they have not broken ground. And the old Clay Chevrolet, no ground is broken. That's the same applicant, and they're waiting to do the construction at the same time, to make it quicker.
Same applicant as this project?
Yes, yes. Who also owns the old Ritz Hotel, which was done a long time ago. Same applicant for the whole kit. That way they can do the construction all at once, less of an impact, get it done quicker, and rather than strain it out all along.
Any other questions? Okay.
Actually, I think just,
Oh, go ahead.
maybe it's more of a comment. But and we talk about this sometimes, but this is sort of a gateway entry into Quincy, North Quincy. And it's just interesting to remember Callahan's point. We've got these developments all happening at similar times there, where right now they're either run down or so. I guess my question is, what will, and again, I'm going to answer that, but what will this new gateway look like when we have these 3 facilities, 3 buildings up and running?
I think it'll look a lot better than it does now. The buildings there, like you said, some of them are in shambles. I mean, Clay Chevrolet has been an eyesore since I live near there. It is the gateway, and that's why the designs, we think, are very nice and aesthetic for people who are coming in and out. Mr. Adamson owns the properties. He also manages them, so they won't be, unlike the place across the street got sold, these will be rental units. He's going to manage them. He manages several properties in Boston, has a great reputation as both a builder and with his properties taking care of them. So I think it's going to be an asset to that part of the city. It's going to make it a lot more pleasing to look at when you're driving by. Thank you.
And may I make one last comment about our traffic study? Jack Gillen is our traffic engineer, and I'll just read you a few short sentences from his executive summary. Hancock Street carries approximately 16,765 vehicles per day in the vicinity of the site. Increased traffic volume on Hancock Street intersection is expected to result in virtually no noticeable increase in delay due to this project. However, Hancock Street traffic is actually affected more by the heavy morning traffic stop at Newport Avenue Extension. During this heavy commuting week.
In addition to that, it's within a half mile of the North Quincy MBTA station, so we expect a lot of people walking down to get on the T to go to work.
Member Kelly.
I believe it is the Clay Chevrolet piece.
Yes.
There was requirements to reactivate those streetlights.
No.
Crosswalks.
Crosswalks are in this, but with the streetlights, Dennis Harrington was the director at the time. That is a state road. That part of Hancock Street is state, and those lights are owned by the state, not the city.
Oh, yeah. I'm not suggesting that it was
Not the city.
required to.
Because Scott,
Mr. Fassi, can we look that up to see where that finished, please?
Just today, I got a call related to that from the proponent. So I checked. That is owned by the city of Quincy, to the Neponset Bridge. That entire section of Hancock until you get to the Neponset Bridge is owned by the city of Quincy. There is the state and our traffic engineers have looked at the corridor from Walnut, Oak Ridge Road, and Myrtle Street. There has been an ask on mitigation as far as a impact fee, basically tied to signalization in that corridor. We are working to have a light replaced that is where, I'm going to correct you now, it wasn't Clay Chevrolet, it was Duggan Brothers.
Duggan.
All right, so Duggan Brothers right there, and there's some other work to be done. As you said, striping has been agreed, but as far as the street lights themselves, I'm unaware of street light conversation. I'm aware of traffic light conversation that's been had, and there will be the traffic light is too much for any one project to absorb. So a number of the projects have been asked to participate in signalization along that corridor, as this project has been as well.
I was informed at the last hearing for the Chevrolet place that it was by the previous director, that it was in fact a state highlight. I mean, and that those lights were state. And that the reason that there's bags on them now is when they did the construction on the bridge, they wanted the traffic to flow more smoothly because there's no, it's a pedestrian light, but there's nobody really goes across the street. There's nothing over there to go to. And people from the bigger building down, there's a set of lights there. If they're going to Dunkin' Donuts, which is right in the same area, they use that traffic light down there. We are putting in new handicap ramps on all the corners and new sidewalks. So we are making improvements to the pedestrian traffic as well as the handicap accessible.
Any other questions? Okay, that concludes your presentation.
Yes, it does.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so I'd ask anybody that wishes to speak to come up. If you're not shy, we have sign-in sheets over on the...
If no one else wants to go, I got just one quick thing.
Identify yourself, sir.
John Rutherford, 62 Brown Wall Road. Just from looking at the map geo, this is right near the flood zone. This isn't in the flood zone, this property, but they're gonna be redoing the maps and it's in a flood area. And am I correct that they're gonna be things put in this building like underneath the ground which collect flood water and stuff and move the water?
Yes, there's going to be drainage. It is not in flood zone. It's as it starts going up the hill, and it's actually on a hill.
You will though be removing grass
Yes.
right now that does take water in, and that's in the neighborhood. It's basically like you're gonna take the runoff from your building and they're gonna move it to the surrounding neighbors. And if I'm correct, when I look at the map too, are there 3 houses on Myrtle Street still? Like, so you're building that building on Hancock Street, and then are there still gonna be 3 houses on Myrtle Street that are gonna be right next to it?
I don't understand.
This
house is on Myrtle Street.
Like that lot of land isn't on the corner. It goes Myrtle Street, there's like a couple houses, and then that's a kind of big lot of land which is right next to that. I'm just saying, people that live on Myrtle Street are gonna have to look at that giant house. And again, we're back to the 500 square feet per dwelling unit in a business C zoning area. They only have the right to build there if you, as a planning board, give them that special permit to build in residential units in a business C. So when they say by right, you don't by right have the right to do any residential there in the business C unless they get that special permit that you grant. Now, I wish that, we would change it to at least 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit or 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit, but it's just, there's something wrong with our zoning code, and until it changes, we're gonna keep getting developers coming up here and asking for project after project after project. And as a citizen and a taxpayer in this city, it's my duty to stand up and say, I'm against the density of this project. I mean, build smaller projects. There's a traffic problem in Quincy right now that's out of control. And even if these people don't have cars and they're taking the trains are so crowded in the mornings right now that they can't handle more people. So the infrastructure in the city of Quincy really needs to be addressed before we just keep building after building after building after building after building. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to address it to the issue of the density of the business city. I think since 1971, when the zoning was adopted, there have been, at least to my memory, there have been at least 5 different requests to amend that section of the Quincy zoning that deals with the density in a business city. And for a clarification, at one point in time it went from 350 to 500, and at one point there was also suggested amendment to go to 2,500 square feet. Never passed. It's at 500 now.
No, I agree, but I mean, there's also a motion later coming in the new transit-orientated district where they actually want to lower that from 500 to 325, which is going back to originally like where it was. They redid the zoning code in 2011, and it's to the benefit of the developers, not to the benefit of the people that live in Quincy. And all I'm saying is that I don't understand it, and it just needs to be changed.
But to the business C district, you're now alluding to another district, but I'm telling you that in the business C district, the issue of density has been addressed or suggested amendment at least 5 different times since 1971. Maybe more, but that's my recollection when I was planning director.
Well, we're ready for a 6th time.
Well, that's fine. But
So-
we're talking business C, you're talking another issue.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, it's just, I just don't understand it. I mean, it seems like the developers wrote that paragraph. At least put that paragraph into the chart, because that paragraph isn't, if we're gonna have a zoning code, make a chart where all the districts are in there. Don't have a sub-paragraph that's in there that's up to interpretation, is all I'm saying. I just don't understand it.
But I will tell you that it was in the 1971 revision.
No, I agree. It's an old rule that needs to be changed.
Anybody wishes to speak? Or sign? Anyone wishes to speak or sign? Third and last time, anybody wishes to speak and sign? I have a motion to continue this to December 14th board meeting.
So moved.
Second? Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. I'm going to take an item out of order, and that is the public hearing on the transit-oriented zoning overlay. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Quincy Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, November 9th, 2016, on or after 8:31 in the first floor of the Boards and Commission Room, Quincy City Hall, 1305 Hancock Street, and perform its statutory review of the City Council Order 2016-249. Under this order, titled 17 Zoning, Section 8.0 will be amended by adding a section relating to transit-oriented districts. The purpose of this hearing is to give interested parties the opportunity to comment on proposed changes. A copy of the City Council Order 2016-249 may be examined in the Department of Planning and Community Development, Quincy City Hall, 34 Coddington Street. Mr. Stevens.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Rob Stevens with the Planning Department. This proposed zoning change was submitted to the City Council, and this board, in its role supporting zoning amendments, has scheduled a public hearing to provide the public an opportunity to speak and to also organize a recommendation back to the City Council on the zoning ordinance itself. This zoning ordinance makes its way to the board largely as a result of the MBTA's decision to pursue redevelopment opportunities at their transit facilities throughout the greater Boston area. A little more than a year ago, the MBTA released a request for development proposals for the North Quincy MBTA station. A developer was selected for that site, and there is also has been discussions of the T's interest of also releasing a development RFP for the Quincy Adams station as well. The genesis of this zoning ordinance comes before you as a result of the proposed North Quincy redevelopment area. The city has had experience with dense urban transit-oriented development in the Quincy Center revitalization initiatives, where back in 2005 the city adopted the Quincy Center zoning ordinance, which relaxed a lot of the dimensional requirements that are needed to get development on these sites, but made up for those with the adoption of design guidelines. That format was mimicked here with the development from the Solicitor's Office of the transit-oriented districts. Once we received this proposed zoning overlay district, the Planning Department has engage the services of Boston Survey Consultant Group, BSC Group, to draft design guidelines that would be a companion to the zoning ordinance. We have here tonight Principal Russ Burke from BSC Group to discuss the zoning ordinance as well as the draft guidelines that his firm has prepared. And I'd like to introduce Russ right now to make a brief presentation.
Mr. Burke.
Thank you. My name is Russ Burke. I head up the planning practice at the BSC Group. And I've just been asked to take a look at the proposed transit-oriented development district, offer some insight, and also our company has also been involved working with the planning department in putting together companion draft design guidelines that would be an important component of the transit-oriented development. If I may, I just want to give a little background on transit-oriented development, just for the record. It's a concept that really is being quite popular and promoted. One of the basic tenets of planning is that land use and transportation go hand in hand. And the concept is that when you have public transit, particularly subway lines, that at these nodes, it creates an opportunity where you may provide additional densities in order to accommodate and promote the more pedestrian traffic and get away from the auto-oriented development patterns that have been really ravaging a lot of our communities since the advent of the automobile. And TODs are basically something that is very much found with the new urbanism movement and sustainability, promoting pedestrian-friendly environments that create reduced demand for the automobile. We often find that when projects are built under TOD, leveraging the proximity to public transportation, the reduced parking basically caters to people who are drawn to living in a more urban environment. They have fewer cars, they have less reliance on the automobile. And I think we see a number of evidence with the millennial generation, which has been moving more towards the city to urban environments for work opportunities as well as life experience opportunities. They are more the Uber or the Hubway or ride their bikes or like to take public transportation. They have many of them. I know my son lives down in Washington, D.C., does not have a car and just uses Uber and uses the car as necessary. What you find with TOD development is that it's often an accompanying component where you do have public transit, particularly with subway lines, is really the prime transportation mode that you can really maximize the benefit of TOD. You see it often where communities on commuter lines have it, and commuter trains don't really have the frequency or the infrastructure capacity, the transportation infrastructure capacity that you do find with subway rapid transit. The other thing that you find with TOD development is that there's an inverse proportionality between where the development takes place and the distance from the station that services it. So what that means is the closer you are to the station, the greater the density, the further away you get. You sometimes see a stepping down of the density. In this case, the proposed TOD districts are quite strategic and really, for the most part, focused right in the areas of the not the commuter rail, but the the subway stations themselves. So we're really talking about ground zero, and as such should probably avail themselves of the most density that the city wishes to place in these areas. The design guidelines play a critical component, because when you start talking about the type of density that accompanies this, the design guidelines are a really important component to make sure that the development in terms of its massing, its articulation, the amenities that are provided both with the development as well as the accompanying public realm improvements, all working together. It also sets forth considerations with respect to how it interfaces with the surrounding area, and that you just don't want to have a huge, massive structure all of a sudden plopped right next to a sensitive abutting use. So that's something that really provides the planning board, when they, if this were to be adopted as part of the zoning ordinances, provides the planning board with really the frame of reference for which it would evaluate and decide on certain proposals. It so happened today, I did receive an email from the Transit-Oriented Development Institute that I'll share with the board. It's just an overview of TOD, and it's basically asking planners to join their institute and buy all the goodies that they promote and publish. But it does provide, I think, a very interesting overview of some of the components of transit-oriented development and how it's been applied throughout the country. And I'll be glad to respond to any questions that the board may, or the public may have with respect to this.
Any questions from board members? Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. How, so I was just looking at the North Quincy, Wollaston, Quincy Adams, TOD diagrams, and then there's like sort of a red line that I'm assuming defines the district. How do you determine who determined what that red line?
I'll let Rob fill that.
Yeah, Member Camiso, we looked at the North Quincy, Wollaston, and Quincy Adams Station. For the record, Quincy Center is not included in this overlay district. We believe that the Quincy Center zoning ordinance and urban renewal plan that you guys have played a role in is already, covers that station for these same type of developments. The boundaries for North Quincy is the station proper, the MBTA land. There are private properties along Hancock Street and city-owned property, a fire station. And the belief was to keep that block whole for that station. As it relates to the Wollaston station, it's only the MBTA property proper. There's no private property associated with the Wollaston station district.
So if you go across the street, Newport Ave, there's some commercial spaces there. That's not included?
We are not including that with this proposed overlay district.
Okay.
It was considered, but this is really a response to the fact that all four of our stations are reaching the end of their service life. All four of our stations are going to be need to be rehabbed by the state, by the MBTA. And we've seen them submit a request for proposals for North Quincy. We believe Quincy Adams. It also fits that category, so it felt appropriate to encourage the best types of development for those sites specific. I would point out on the Quincy Adams station, there's a triangular surface lot adjacent to the Quincy Adams garage that we believe is a potential development site. That triangle piece is part of the Home Depot land holdings in that area. So that is the reason we extended that district to include that triangle as well as the Home Depot store site proper. So North Quincy has a few private parcels on Hancock Street. We think that's an area, Hancock, West Squantum Street, that we'd love to see the neighborhood reconnected in that area, and also factored into our thinking of including that in this district. Thank you.
Follow up with my question, how does that play out with the lease with the MBTA?
What lease would you be referring to?
So if there's something, a private developer is going to develop on this TOD, which I assume that's why we're suggesting to approve that, so somebody can develop on it, the private, are they going to have to consume the private land too?
It would be up to that private
developments, because it's different lots.
It would be up to the private development that comes forward to determine whether they're going to do land assemblage or not. It'd also be up to the RFP that the T would release. It's their land. Reference has been made to certain rights the city has as it relates to that land. Those rights are, sort of approval of any proposed development. Needs the mayor and legislative approval. Once that approval occurs, the plans for that development, as it's proposed in this overlay district, will be sent to this board, who will be identified as a special permit granting authority for such developments, provided that they move forward.
Does that answer your question, Member Gilman?
Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Stevens?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. In the review, working with the BSC group on this zoning ordinance, there is a change that I would like to recommend that the board include in any recommendation back to the city council on this. It's a change in the proposed zoning language. It's under section 8.5.3. It's item number 1, and it deals with a minimum lot size for proposed new development. In the ordinance, it was proposed as 5 acres. We believe that is an extreme area. The recommendation from the staff in consultation with the BSC group would be recommending that minimum lot size of 5 acres be reduced to 1 acre. I think there's some general thought that the whole site, might get redeveloped, the whole district or significant portions, but in talking with BSC and some others, we're likely to potentially see multiple development sites on some of these proposed stations. So we think a minimum 1 acre size of a development lot would be appropriate. For comparison's sake, the North Quincy TOD district in its entirety, including all the roadway and right-of-way and all the land, is approximately 17 acres. The Wollaston Station, again, with all the rail right-of-way, roadway, and parcels of land is 8 acres. And the Quincy Adams Station proposed district would be a little more than 31 acres.
Do we have a copy of that document that you're referring to?
It would have been in the original package that I sent out.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, thank you. What section number is that, Mr. Stevens?
The section 8.5.3, it's item number 1. I'd also, just for point of clarification, under the city zoning code, all special permit granting authorities have the ability to adopt rules and regulations and guidelines. These draft guidelines have been provided to the city council. They have advertised a public hearing for tomorrow night. But this document would be finalized, this document would belong to this board. We would be back before you to finalize this document if this zoning overlay district is approved by that city council during their deliberations on the same subject.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question?
Member Commisso.
Mr. Stevens, do you have examples of other TOD-type developments that have already, I guess, existing developments in this area, in the greater Boston area, that might be similar to something we might see here?
So that's a request. Do I have examples in front of me? No, but we can compile those. We're seeing stuff all across this country. In fact, there's a tremendous push for transit. The piece that Mr. Burke had handed us, there was a big election last night. And one of the things on that election is the majority of 78 measures on ballots in 26 states, totaling close to $200 billion. The majority of those measures have passed throughout this country. So last night, billions of dollars in rail infrastructure and TOD projects, or projects that would support TOD, were approved across this country in 26 states. I had the opportunity to be in the Washington, D.C. area in the spring. We toured a few TOD sites down there. And what we've seen is the investment at the station itself definitely becomes a trigger. Another element of the piece that Mr. Burke released to us, that properties within a 5-minute walk to train stations are, sell or rent for 20 to 25% higher than that surrounding area. So, and we're seeing millennials, and we're seeing all demographics looking for urban transit-oriented development. It's a really exciting time, but there's the opportunity here with all 4 of our stations needing significant rehab work for themselves. Yep.
Any other questions from the board? All right, this is a public hearing. Ask anybody that would like to comment. Come forward, state their name, and feel free. Or if they're shy, then they can obviously sign the sheets on the window.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Harrington. I live at 127 Prospect Avenue in Wollaston, and I would urge this committee, this board, as well as the city council to expand the Wollaston district to include the Brook Street Business District. That entire business district needs to be just blown away and completely redeveloped. Both sides of Brook Street and all the way up to Beale Street and behind the fire station. Every building there needs to be torn down and rebuilt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Anyone else wishes to speak?
John Orfeld, 62 Ground Wall Road. Are any of those documents that you guys are looking at right now online on the planning department?
No, this is the first time we've been introduced to.
Is there any way that, like, there's copies of, like, I would like to see the areas? Like, how can the citizens see?
I can give you a copy if you'd give me your email address.
Like, is there any way I can maybe get a paper copy tonight?
And I got extras.
That would be awesome. And I really, until I actually review it, it's hard to make a comment. Will we be able to make another comment, or are you guys going to vote on this and this is it?
City council hearings tomorrow night.
So, I mean, but for the city council thing, I mean, I agree. I actually was at, across from Newport Ave is a disaster. I had my shop there for a while and stuff. I just have a problem with, you kind of do enrich people that own the land by doing this. So, from what you're saying, I'm thinking of that gas station that used to be in North Quincy. That's part, which is a big grassy knoll right now. Is that part of the area?
No, the one that was demolished.
Yeah.
And cleared. No. But the other gas station on the opposite corner is in the district.
Okay. But I mean, it's a slippery slope. And again, this is 325 per dwelling unit?
Correct.
In this,
It
so,
mimics the Quincy Center zoning ordinance.
so if anyone here ever listens to what I talk about, this is the exact opposite of what I've been calling for, which is more restrictive zoning. This actually makes it even worse. So, you know, it'd be like, a good idea would be include that area across from Wollaston and change that to 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Let them go up 20 stories if they want, you know, but make sure they have 2 parking places. Like, I want to address one issue. You should put something in there that if they do apartment buildings, that a parking space must come with the rent. That, you know, put stipulations that they can't charge people $65 for a parking space, because back to that 999 thing, they do want $65 for parking spaces. So if someone rents an apartment in Quincy, it comes with 1 parking place, minimum. And they cannot charge extra. And therefore, as citizens, we know that everyone that rents an apartment will at least have 1 place. And it's a matter of having extra parking so people aren't parking all along the street. Like, you can't park on Hancock Street, am I correct? You can't park on West Squantum Street, so if there's too much stuff around there. But like I said, we're going way too fast. You know, urban redevelopment plan number 4, Quincy Center should be our main focus right now. We should be working on Quincy Center, getting that nice. We should be working on making sure in front of City Hall is really nice, making sure you can park somewhere and come to this meeting. I wish the planning board would address parking for City Hall meetings. There needs to be, it seems like no one thought about where people are going to park when we redesign Quincy City Hall. Parking definitely is an issue. I thank you for this document because I love information. Thank you for this.
Anyone else wish to speak? Sir. Building a 10-inch circle. First off, these are 3 very important properties. They're arguably the 3 last large parcels that are readily available for redevelopment in Quincy. But they really, to call them transported development is a little bit pushing the state of the art. What they really are is development next to a train station. I look at them as more almost strip malls. You're talking about basically putting housing near stations, a little bit of retail on the ground level. Transit-oriented development, from my understanding, is density upon density. That's my terming. What Streetworks proposed for Quincy Center fit that model. Restaurants, some retail, a theater, perhaps a bowling alley, some club space, a community that had things going on, rather than just you walk out of your building, you walk across the street, jump on the train, you go into Boston. The next problem. You're talking about putting density in what's not a very dense community. There's no movie theater in Quincy. If you want to live in one of these units, you got to get a zip car and go to Braintree, you got to jump on the red line and go to the Boston Common Theater. We got a bunch of new restaurants in town, but you know what? How many times can you go out to the same 6 or 8 new restaurants in Quincy Center before that gets old? You can go on a pub crawl, we still got a few dive bars in Quincy, but there's no movie theater. There's no performing arts. We don't have art museums, we get some displays in the library. The library, you know, mothers with children are nervous to go to the library because it's not secure and safe. I can point out maintenance problems with that, and the building was just redone 15 years ago. You need to think about this. Now back to his thing of parking. I looked at the MAPC plan, and when they did the parking study of a sort, and how much growth they're going to have in Quincy, basically the city looked at how much MPC was saying, if we really get the transit fixed, we can have this kind of growth in Metro Boston. Quincy just sort of, Greater Boston, Quincy just sort of said, okay, we're, I don't know, 1/20th of the population, we're going to take 1/20th of that growth. So what if that growth is going to be multiple family? You know, we're looking at multiple family, whereas that actual growth is single family, apartments, condos, blah, 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 blah. You can't just say, we're 20% of the population, we're going to get 20% of the housing, we're going to put in all apartments. That's nuts. You can't grab it. I mean, already we're looking at Boston rents, people cooling off, and we're talking about big growth. Then they said, well, we only need this much parking because this is what we've got going on along this corridor. Well, a lot of that corridor was housing built 60, 80, as much as 100 years ago. There were apartment buildings with maybe 2 parking spaces that were created that used to be the loading space in the back or where they kept the trash. They're not high rent. No one, to the best of my knowledge, has gone in and done the simplest experiment to find out what we really need in a community like Quincy, which at the end of the day is a suburban community. It's not transit-oriented development over the Fenway, over the fens, over the pike. It is a suburban development, density in a moderately dense area. You should be going out and having the city do simple surveys of 10 Faxon or Amelia or whatever they're calling it now. You should be looking at Monroe Place. You should be looking at those other buildings and say, folks, how many cars do you have per unit? You do 100, 150 apartments in those buildings, you've got your sample, and you've got a basis to look at it, rather than just say, well, we're just going to do half a spot per bedroom. And so what if we don't have theaters and people have to get a zip card to go to Braintree or they got to go to Boston? So what if they want to go dancing in a club, they got to go to the South End or the Fens or something like that. They want to go see some museums, they got to go into, again, Longwood or go over to Harvard and see their art museum. I mean, Quincy is not conveniently located to a highway, at least for Quincy Center. It's not easy to get across the Neponset Bridge. We don't even need to discuss what a disaster the red line is. Quincy is more of an isolated with a moat around it than people realize. And you just can't assume public transit friendliness that you might see somewhere in Boston. We're the end of a spoke. We're not in a hub. We're not in a node. We don't have cross streets. I can remember when my nieces were at Boston College. I had to go, hell, I had to go to Westwood and then come back in. As a crow flies from here to Boston College, it might be, what, 8 miles? You can't get there from here that way. And that's the problem. Quincy's got that same issue. We're the end of a spoke, away from the hub, with no lateral transportation. And if you're talking about doing public transportation, you can't do it to the density and the lack of parking that you can do, like I said, over the pike and the fens. It's a different proposition. I see nothing being done to really adjust, make those sorts of adjustments in the plan, the codes, the specs, requirements, or whatever. And here you're looking at doing, what, 50 acres of redevelopment? And jamming it through without looking at those kinds of things? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Sir, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Eric Cohen. I'm a physician here in Quincy. I've been here for about 25, almost pushing 30 years now. And over the past number of years, I've bought some property, including the property that abuts the North Quincy area. Personally, I think the idea of having some kind of a development plan for these areas, I think is a great idea. I only just got the mailing for this meeting maybe a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, something like that, and decided I should probably be here since I probably abut these areas. I don't know exactly what your map looks like, but I can certainly imagine that I'm on Hancock Street, I'm in there. And so there are other documents that you guys are looking at and other regulations and words and whatnot. I haven't seen any of it. So I don't know if the city council is planning on voting on this tomorrow, whether there's going to be a vote taken tonight or something, but I think people who are in the neighborhood should actually have more than just a week's notice to be able to discuss these issues. Is there any way I can get my hands on some of this stuff, maybe either now or tomorrow?
Yeah.
That was easy.
There you go.
Thanks,
Got it
Jim.
now?
Nice to see you.
Is that the whole thing?
That's the whole thing, and that's the piece that brought us today, and the for your edification.
I only need one.
I know which one you're looking at, so I'm going. This is. This is one.
Yep.
So this is.
Thank you. And these things here were produced, I hate to say it, how long ago?
We've been working on them for a few weeks, but the draft that is presented tonight for the council is just that. It's a draft. There may be changes to it. We heard one earlier tonight where some of the earlier discussions were a 5-acre minimum on the site. We've reduced that down to the 1 acre on the site. It just makes it, you're never going to have a development on the entire site.
Right. That's it. And is this going to be voted on tonight? Is there some?
For any proposed zoning change that's with the city council, part of the regulations with the city council, they need to communicate the piece to the planning board for review and recommendation. So if this board sees fit, they could make a recommendation to the city council with regards to this proposal.
Okay. And that
The council's the only one that.
This board does not approve it.
We're only a recommendation.
Gotcha. And so if they got the recommendation tonight, would the city council then be in a position to vote on this information tomorrow night?
If they were in position, yeah, they could, absolutely, because they have our recommendation.
Okay.
They don't need our recommendation.
No, but they have to wait. If they don't have our recommendation, then they have to wait
60 days.
It's a period of time. It's a short period of time, but.
I'm not saying I'm not in favor of it, and as I say, I'm more interested in just having the knowledge of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Anyone else wishes to speak? Come forward.
Good evening, Chairman. Emily Ross, resident of North Quincy, actually came here on another matter, but now that I've learned about this one. So can you speak, as your profession would dictate, about what the downside would be of going from the 5 acres to the 1 acre? Are we going to see sort of fragmented development, potentially maybe a parcel of land that gets developed over the course of many years versus all at once? And what are the risks? Maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, I would address that. The point here is we'd like to be prepared if private investment or development comes forward. As was stated earlier, the majority of the 3 stations, it's the MBTA property that we're targeting. That's a state agency. They can't just develop that. They will issue a request for proposals. The city does have an opportunity to comment on those proposals from the executive and the legislative body. At that point, it would come before this board as proposed to review, I think you've heard of stormwater, traffic, all the details. The 5 acres was put in there, and as I mentioned, some of the acres of the site. The 5 acres, particularly with Wollaston, that would essentially say that entire parking lot, surface parking lot, and quite likely over the actual train tracks, that would be the only development contemplated for Wollaston if it remained at 5 acres. So we feel dropping that down to 1 acre would allow a portion of the Wollaston surface lot to be developed. And that is, I think, more appropriate for that particular station. I don't think we would want to encourage a massive major development over the entire footprint of the Wollaston station. A little bit is also true with the Quincy Adams station. The history of the train stations is the 60s and the 70s, the Red Line was extended from Boston for the North Quincy, Quincy Center, and Wollaston stations. After that, late 70s, early 80s, the Braintree station was added. And then they came back and did the Quincy Adams. So the Quincy Adams garage, from our analysis, is still a solid structure. So we believe that garage is not going anywhere. What you're going to most likely see, as I mentioned, the triangle parcel in behind that near the tracks. It could be a target for development, and they have some surface area up front as well. Those are not 5 acre sites. So
And is that parcel owned by Home Depot or owned by the triangle?
That portion is owned by the Home Depot, but there is access right there for the T-buses and other MBTA infrastructure.
Thank you for
And that's
answering.
Does that make sense?
That's a minimum one, that's not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak? Anyone else wishes to speak? Third and last time? Anyone wishes to speak or be recorded? Okay. What's the board's wishes? Close the public hearing?
I have one
Okay.
question. For our edification, Rob, could you just let us know how the board determined to limit the Wollaston station to just the parking lot and why it was not extended further upfield to Hancock perhaps?
Yeah, we did look at that. We think the dimensional pullbacks as proposed in the zoning ordinance may not necessarily fit the neighborhoods beyond the station itself. I would like to think that we'd be back in the future with something that's a little bit more appropriate, a little bit more all-encompassing. I think this board and the folks that are familiar with that neighborhood know we've done some visioning of the Wollaston area. It's really a wonderful business village that I do think we would like to promote new private investment in that area. But there is a lot of concerns of preserving the neighborhood scale of that business district. As a result, I think we wanted to keep it tight to the Wollaston station itself. Again, because I don't believe some of these regulations and the dimensions would be quite appropriate for the as you can see, the image is a 5-minute walking circle. We need to look a little bit further exactly on some recommended dimensional requirements for that area. So that's really it.
Extremely helpful, thank you.
We think it would support the development of the surface lot, which I think that's a no-brainer. I think we've all thought that. Why doesn't the T develop that surface lot? Again, would like to promote a structured parking facility in Wollaston that would allow development sites in and around that to be developed. If there's development suggestions or thoughts on some of these other areas, I think that would be a tipping point for us to consider possibly expanding the district or coming in with a different TOD zone, maybe TOD 2, that would take a look at the areas immediately around these stations. I think the immediacy is the stations themselves and the rehab and redevelopment focus that is there right now.
If I may, you may, as you move further away from ground zero, you may want to taper back on the regulations themselves, so it's a better transition. And as Rob said, it basically allows better integration with the existing neighborhood and preserving those portions of the existing neighborhood that should be preserved.
Very helpful, thank you. And just one more question. Am I reading it correctly that the uses contemplated in these overlay districts would be only public spaces and housing, or does it contemplate that there could be retail and other uses on it?
Oh, it's mixed use.
It is, okay, that's why I make sure.
Absolutely. Well, one of the interesting things here that I paid a particular focus to on some of my review and comments on the guidelines with VSC is that, is again, when these stations were developed, they were developed to collect commuter cars and have them park. And the way I kind of look at some of these areas is they're a little bit disconnected. from the surrounding neighborhood. I would love that any TOD development that comes forward provides for a gateway into that transit use, and that landscape, streetscape elements are there, wayfinding elements are there, for the customers of the public transit. I would hate to see a scenario where a giant wall, a development forms a wall and actually makes it more difficult or longer to, gateway points to actually get to the station platform. So I think as you guys will look at that guidelines and work with that document, if this measure moves forward, that's one of the big focuses of those.
Any other questions?
One last.
Go ahead.
One last question from me. Back to the Wollaston TOD. My understanding is that the Wollaston station will be renovated in any that's part in the relatively near future.
Yes.
So, is there an opportunity, I guess, as there's that type of development happening, to connect that with any TOD-related development, and how does that work? Or are those separate things and you just kind of think about them separately?
We don't have those answers. That answer lies with who owns that property, who is the MBTA. The MBTA has slated that Wollaston Station is coming up for a major rehab and renovation. We have not seen plans, construction management of any of that scenario. But one would think, coming out of that or headed towards the completion of that renovation, they could be approached, or they may make that decision to move to RF, to issue a request for proposals to the development community. But I think the priority is the rehab and renovation of that station first. But this would be in place again to support good private investment in the city of Quincy at all of our stations.
That's the only station that isn't handicap accessible, and that isn't handicap accessible because of the flooding issue.
That is correct.
One question.
I'm sorry.
Is this document amendable in whatever if we approve or propose?
Would that be the zoning ordinance or the design guidelines?
Either one.
Yes, it is amendable. The city council owns all of the city's zoning code. So any amendment, this board actually could, on its own, I believe, suggest an amendment. Or it could be generated by the city or the city council itself. So yes, it is amendable moving forward. And the design guidelines, this board would own, and they have, excuse me, they have the opportunity to amend that. The downtown guidelines have been amended twice since they were originally adopted in 2006.
One thing I would point out on amending the zoning portion is that amendments that would increase the scope of the proposal would not be allowable. So if you were to expand the area to be included in the district, in order to do that, you would have to re-advertise to give proper due notice to the public that the area has changed. But if you were to, for example, go from 5 acre minimum to a 1 acre minimum, as Rob had suggested, that would not be expanding the scope of the ordinance. So that would be the one caution I would provide to the board.
Any other questions from board members? A motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Okay. It's the wishes of the board. I would just, if the board is in a position, I would just recommend that as part of its recommendation to the council on the zoning change, that we state it right up front in the as part of our recommendation that we're we're recommending minimum parcel be reduced from 5 acres to 1 acre. And again, it's a recommendation. The council can do whatever it wants. And they can listen to it, they can adopt it, they can not even adopt it. But I would just suggest to the board that if it's the wish of the board to reduce that 5 acres to 1 acre, to take a separate vote as part of our recommendation. God bless you. Discussion.
I'll make the motion with the stipulation articulated by the chairman.
Okay, so is there a second to the motion, which is to decrease the minimum 5 acres to 1 acre and adopt the zoning ordinance as presented?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Can we get that recommendation over to the council for the morning?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir, this is very helpful.
The next item is the definitive subdivision for 12R 29 Hoover Avenue, case number 2016, subdivision -01.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. For the record, my name is Christopher Harrington. My law office is at 21 McGrath Highway. I represent the applicant, Quincy Development Group LLC. This is the second hearing that we've had on this definitive subdivision plan. Since our last meeting, we received the peer review report. Mr. Burke has had a number of exchanges with the peer review engineer. Answered all of their questions, amended his plans to incorporate everything that was asked for. We've also worked with the planning department staff, as well as all the city departments to answer and address every issue that they raised about this project. So essentially what we have here is Hoover Ave is a dead-end street over in the Penns Hill area of the city. And what we're planning to do is extend Hoover Avenue with a turning circle at the end and build 4 single-family homes. There's minor dimensional relief required for 2 of the houses for the front yard set. 2 of the houses require dimensional relief for front yard setback, and 1 for average lot width. For lot number 2, the long lot that's on the left-hand side of the plan, the couple feet in the back of the house extends into an area of the lot that's less than 85 feet wide, so we get a variance for that. This project is on the zoning board's agenda next Tuesday night. We're confident that those variances will be approved. They are relatively minor dimensional variances, and I'd just like to have Mr. Burke explain to you the changes that he made on his plans with the peer review engineer since the last time we were here. Thanks, Chris.
Good evening again, Jim Burke with the Sell Burke and Associates. Several revisions kind of tightened up the design since the last time you saw us. There was a question about wetlands in Braintree. We went to Braintree and picked up the subdivision plan and was able to locate that wetland off-site. The 100-foot buffer does clip our lot, and it does actually include the large recharge basin. So we'll be filing a notice of intent with the city of Quincy. I have to get it in for the next meeting by November 17th, and we're in the process of preparing that application. We also did 5 test pits, one obviously where the recharge basin's going, and then 4 other ones where the proposed single-family homes are going. The results are on the existing conditions plan, these locations here. Soils were found to be consistent with what we originally expected them to be, which is poor. But the design for the recharge, for the houses essentially remained the same. The groundwater was a little high in this one, so we had to trim down the depth of the recharge system, so it's a little less thick and it's a little bit wider. for this particular iteration. This has been reviewed by Tetra Tech and was deemed satisfactory at this point. What else did we do? Those are the big items. Some minor revisions with the profile. They were asking for the right, left sidelines to be placed on there. That was done. 4-foot deep sumps were always included in the design, but he wanted 4-foot deep sumps for the drain manholes as well, which are part of the water quality system that we have proposed for this development. Waters remain the same. Sewers remain the same as well. That's basically most of it. A lot of Scrivener errors and the like were corrected on the plans as well. But if you have any questions on any of the peer review comments or local board comments, local department comments.
Novermber, just have one question. This has been before us before, and I remember a gentleman from the neighborhood, the Keneally property.
Yep.
Next to the on the. If you find the Rogers property abutting.
Oh, okay.
And now right next door, Keneally property, there was concern raised about a number of very high mature trees on the Keneally property.
Yeah, there's
and the root system may come into. I can show you.
I thought they were up here, to tell you the truth.
There may be trees up there too.
Under Bertoldi, and there's a fence that runs back there. It's 5 feet off our property, and the trees are on the other side of that fence. As far as the proposed work, and then and she asked about the recharge system. And it used to be a block like this, so to respond, I kind of straightened it out. So I made it long and slender as opposed to short and fat.
Yeah.
So that should help us keep away from the tree line.
Okay, and so just to be clear, I'm not talking about the Bertoldi property.
Okay.
I'm talking about the Keneally property, which is next to the Rogers property.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that there's no concern with the fact that the retaining wall comes so close to that property that it's going to compromise the root system of those trees. Because I remember that was a major concern when this was raised before, and I just want to make sure it's not going to be a problem.
Well, we're doing, I would have to say it's not going to be a problem because we're filling on this side. So the excavation on the tree side is going to be, less than required. We're also off that property line a good 4 feet as well.
Perfect.
So I think we'll be safe without impacting those trees.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Harrington, I see where you have the approval of the Health Department, Health Commission.
Yes, the health department's approved the project as well as the fire department approved the turning circle. And one of the final items that we're hashing out today is that in the middle of Hoover Ave, there's a sewer line that comes to this point here. And now that sewer line runs through this person's yard in a sewer easement. It runs through these backyards over here and then heads this way and connects into the city system. So our 4 new houses on the original plan were proposed for the sewer lines on these would come together in the middle of the cul-de-sac and then connect into their own sewer line, which would run out here, connect into the same system, and then go along. What the city's engineering department asked us to do is to begin, instead of beginning our sewer line down here, where the new houses are, begin it here and bring the sewer line all the way down the street and then have it all head this way and through here, so that this sewer line can be abandoned in the future, because they've had some problems with it failing and roots breaking up the pipes. So what we've agreed to do with the city is to, instead of starting our sewer pipe down here, to start it up here, bring it all the way down the street, and for these homes here, these two, this one, in our sewer line to put a T connection that if those homeowners need to connect into that, because this line fails, it's there and it's ready to go for it.
Any questions? This is a continued public hearing, so I'm going to ask anybody that wishes to speak on the issue of the subdivision, come forward. Anyone wishes to speak? Good and last time? Okay, I'd ask the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second? Discussion, all those in favor? Aye. In my opinion, they've satisfied all the concerns, not only of our peer reviewer, but also of the city agencies. The issue of the variance for dimensional requirements is an issue that is separate from the subdivision and shouldn't affect the approval or disapproval of the subdivision. If we approve this subdivision, then the onus is, and obviously the applicant's aware of it, the onus is on the applicant to petition the zoning board of appeals to get whatever variance or variances that they may need. I can't make a motion, but I think everything is in order. We have somebody entertain a motion to approve the subdivision.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, we have
oh, I'm sorry.
some conditions.
All right, sorry.
But I would agree with you. I believe this applicant has responded to all the city requests during the review of this subdivision. There's also a waiver on the cul-de-sac, so that's two items. But the planning department recommends approval of the definitive subdivision with the following conditions. One, the decision includes the grant of waiver from section 4-2.8 turning circle. Grant of said waiver is based on the particular size, nature, and location of the subdivision, limited to 4 buildable lots. Number 2, the applicant shall be required to apply for a stormwater management permit from the Department of Public Works prior to any development activities. Number 3, homeowners association is to be formed to deal with the ownership maintenance issues. The recorded homeowners association trust documents shall be submitted to the planning department for the record. Number 4, the city shall not be responsible for the maintenance of any drainage structures on private property. Number 5, the ownership maintenance responsibilities for the proposed recharge system and all related drainage structures must be determined and specified through deed registration or an equivalent mechanism. Number 6, a financing mechanism for the maintenance plan for the proposed subsurface recharge system and all related drainage structures must be developed. Number 7, the applicant shall provide step-outs to the new sewer line in Hoover Avenue for future use by existing homes. Applicant shall notify the city engineering office 1 month prior to the start of construction of the sewer line to coordinate the type of connection required. Number 8, the applicant shall provide the DPW with the proposed 10-foot wide sewer easement on lot number 1 as proposed, to be reviewed and approved at or before the time of construction of the new sewer line. The applicant shall be responsible for filing the final easement with the Registry of Deeds with copies provided to the Planning Department and DPW. The applicant shall install a stop sign and stop bar at both Hoover Street at Franklin and Conrad Street at Hoover. Number 10, the applicant shall submit a construction management plan to the Inspectional Services Department at the time a demolition permit and building permit application is filed. Number 11, the applicant must submit documentation that construction activities proposed for the development of this subdivision will not cause rodent problems for abutters. A rodent control plan must be developed and submitted to the Department of Health for review and approval prior to any site activity. The applicant shall incorporate radon control measures into the design and construction of the new homes. Number 13, at the time of filing a demolition and building permit, the applicant must develop an adequate dust control plan, which will be required to be implemented during any proposed construction activity to ensure conformance with the state and local regulations regarding air pollution. Number 14, the applicant must conform with both local and state regulations regarding noise, since this project site is within a residential neighborhood, and development will likely entail significant noise-generating activities. State sanitary code, any residential units developed as a result of this subdivision will be required to meet all provisions of Article 2 of the State Sanitary Code, minimum standards of fitness for human habitation. Number 16, prior to the demolition of the 4 greenhouses and 4 garages, at the time of applying for a demolition permit, the applicant shall complete complete a professional environmental survey of the 8 buildings to be demolished and remove and legally dispose of any building components which are deemed hazardous. A pre-demolition inspection of the structure proposed for demolition will be required to be performed by the health department prior to obtaining a demolition permit. Number 17, the hours for construction will be as follows: 7 a.m., 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 4 p.m. on Saturday. All construction and deliveries shall be prohibited on Sunday unless a different schedule is approved by the chief of police and city traffic engineer. That's my conclusion.
The only other thing I would add is that I think the applicant had filed the covenant with the application, so that should be some reference that the signed covenant be included as part of the decision. Okay, so we have a recommendation from the board. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the 97 Atlantic Street. Site plan and special permit, planning board case 2016-14. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, the Quincy Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday. The original, October 19, 2016, on the application of GPS Partners, LLC, P.O. Box 81296, Wellesley Hills, Mass. 02481, for site, for a site plan review under the zoning ordinance. The applicant proposes the demolition of an existing 3-family residential structure and the construction of 2 duplex-style townhouses totaling 4 residential units with a total of 8 parking spaces. The applicant also proposes landscaping, drainage, and other site modifications. The property contains 8,890 plus minus square feet of land and is located at 97 Atlantic Street. The subject property is located within a Residence B zoning district and is shown in the Assessor's Plan 6050, Lot 7, Plot 7. Mr. Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So again, I don't want to reiterate what the chairman has said. We were here October 19th. There's really been no changes since that date. The reason for the continuance was really the City of Quincy Department of Public Works Engineering had not completed their review, as well as traffic. Just to advise the board again, waivers were requested for traffic studies, wind and shadow as well, and those were granted by the City of Quincy planning. I know that Vice Chairman Barry and Member Calhoun were not here in October. I'm not sure if you wanted me to present again.
They reviewed the plan.
They have, okay, all right. Regardless, the team is here. Brian Donahue is our architect from Quincy. Scott Henderson is the engineer. Mike Lyon is here as well, Frank Shea. If you have any questions directly from him. There were comments by engineering department as well as traffic after their review. I know that Jen had submitted a letter saying all his comments have been addressed. We are working, I received Deborah Finnegan's review traffic not until 3:30 today. So those comments that she's had, we'll be able to provide her with all of that. Scott Henderson, our engineer, is also traffic, so he'll be able to provide her with what she has requested, which is good. So again, they're all here. My whole team is here. So if you have any questions specifically for them, I have received the recommendations from planning as well, which I know Mr. Stevens will review.
Questions from board members? Hearing none. It is a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak? Come on up.
Thank you again, Chairman. So So my name is Emily Ross. I've owned a home in this community where these gentlemen like to build these condos for 17 years. It's a handy, nice little community close to Boston. As you know, it's very close to Marina Bay, where we have a tremendous amount of traffic. I understand a lot of the traffic that comes up on Quincy Shore Drive doesn't necessarily originate in Marina Bay, but we know that there is a significant amount of development going on there right now. We also know that the Murphy Brothers site, not very far from here, is, they have a plan to build condos there. And I believe that maybe 20, I don't have my exact numbers, but I believe it's about 24 units.
28.
We also had some condos recently allowed on Newbury Ave near the football field. And so quickly, what was just, two-family neighborhood with residential homes, nice mix of that, is turning into condos. And the streets are not really set up to hold all these cars. And so I'm not opposed to the redevelopment of this site. In particular, it's obviously the house had fire, and something needs to be done. But to put 4 condos on a 10,000 square foot lot with 2 bedrooms each, with only 2 parking spaces, I think it's too dense for the neighborhood. The evening that we had the hearing that Councilor Harris sponsored for the community over at Beechwood by the Bay, I happened to drive up Prospect Street by this house. So between Prospect Street and this house at 6 p.m. at night, between Prospect Street, that house, and North Street, which is not a very long area, there were over 20 cars on the other side of that street. So that's without this development. And so these folks, like any people, will have holidays, parties, and they're going to have people over. And the street is going to be packed. And right now, when people drive or park on both sides of that street as they do, it's very difficult to get down that street 2 cars abreast. And so then you have this sort of weaving going on. And Atlantic Street is one of those streets that in a weather emergency, people aren't supposed to park on the street. So where are people going to park? So when these people have guests, where are they going to park? And I can tell you that some of my neighbors, who are good neighbors, have 4 cars, and it's a 2-bedroom house. So we're talking about condos with 2 bedrooms, and there's only 2 parking spots. There are going to be cars all over the place. And I just don't think it's right with all the other development that's going on, with the 18 units that are on Newbury Ave, with the Murphy's Brothers building, which, I'm not thrilled about, but the Murphy's Brothers have been there for years. They've been, my understanding from all the neighbors over there, they've been good neighbors to the community there, and they intend to own that land, and they intend to maintain it. This gentleman, I believe, who lives in Wellesley, he's bought this land, he's gonna sell the units for, $500K each. He's invested about $450 in it. Of course, he's got to buy building materials. So we're just going to grant him this variance so he can pocket all that money. And then the people who are going to own the condos, excuse me, we're going to rely on them to maintain the property. It's not the same as the Murphy Brothers situation. So I just don't think it's the right fit for the neighborhood. And unfortunately, I don't think my other neighbors knew about this meeting tonight. Otherwise, they would be here. So.
Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to correct it, there's 8 parking spaces provided off-street. It's 2 spaces per unit.
2.
But they're handled within the
I
site.
misspoke. Yes, I've seen the diagram. So that's 8, but there's 2 bedrooms for each unit. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Right. So that's assuming there's 1 car per bedroom, which if you lived in my neighborhood, that isn't how it goes. Okay? So there's a 2-bedroom house just like mine. They have 4 cars. Okay, so it's just, and I'm not sure who's going to move into these houses at $500K a pop. Okay, that's very expensive. So what you're going to have is people jamming themselves in there to be able to afford to live there because while it's a nice middle class neighborhood, it's not a high end neighborhood, and that's pretty pricey for the neighborhood. So what I'm asking the board is to consider something that's less dense, a 3-family Originally, this house, my understanding from my neighbors, was a 2-family, and then they got a variance to make it a 3-family. I just checked online, it shows it's a 4, but the functional use of that house was a 1-bedroom downstairs, 1 bedroom on the other side, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. When the house had the fire, there was, I think, 4 people living there. So now we're gonna go to 4 condo units, 2 bedrooms apiece. It's just a lot of cars on top of everything else. And it's not just the parking, it's also about the navigation through the neighborhood. So all those people that are gonna live at Murphy Brothers are gonna come through Up Atlantic and they're gonna go up Newbury to go to, now it's the big Y, or to go wherever, right? Same with the people going up Newbury, who live on Newbury, those 18 units, they're gonna go up. So there's all that traffic. And like the gentleman said earlier, so all these projects get improved on their own merits, but you have, nobody's looking at this on a continuum of all the piles of traffic that we have and all the cars. It just keeps going on and on and on. And since this is only a 10,000 square foot lot, I recommend that the gentleman revisit their plan and tone it down. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Didn't last time? Anyone wishes to speak? A motion to close the public hearing? So moved. So second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Mr. Fleming, any zoning relief required from the zoning board of appeals?
There is some dimensional relief that we're going to be scheduled for zoning board of appeals, fortunately not till December 13th. So it's just real dimensional. Again, not requesting variance for parking as we meet the requirement of 2 spaces per unit. I will say too, for ingress to the site, we're using the existing driveway, which is a pretty wide driveway, which will provide for temporary parking within that driveway because of its width, for any visitors thing for a short period of time. So we don't see this as adding or exacerbating that the concern of parking right on Atlantic Street itself. I think the site will provide for that as well.
Any questions from board members? Mr. Stevens.
Good evening. After consideration of the plan and accompanying documents and the comments received by the city staff, the planning department recommends approval of site plan review under zoning ordinance Title 17, Section 9.5.1 with the following special conditions. The applicant shall submit a construction management plan to the Inspectional Services Department at the time a demolition permit and building permit application is filed. Stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall be recorded at the Norfolk County Registry of Deeds. Number 3, the applicant shall apply for a stormwater connection permit from the Department of Public Works before construction. Number 4, the applicant shall replace the existing concrete sidewalk in front of the proposed development on Atlantic Street. Granite curb should be reset or replaced as needed, and concrete survey monuments shall be installed to delineate the public right-of-way. Number 5, the applicant shall develop and submit a dust control plan to the Department of Health for review and approval prior to any site activity. Said dust control plan is to be implemented during any site activities to ensure compliance with state air quality regulations. Number 6, the applicant should develop a rodent control contingency plan prior to the commencement of construction activities on site, which will include name and contact information for on-call pest control company. Said rodent control plan shall be developed and submitted to the Department of Health for review and approval prior to obtaining their building permits. Number 7, upon completion of this project, the applicant shall submit to the Planning Board and Engineering Office as-built plans showing all utilities, building footprints, reference bounds, and benchmarks defining the total site, facilities, and rights-of-way. Plans shall be submitted in digital format and acceptable to the Planning Department. Hours for construction activities will be as follows: 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday. All construction and delivery shall be prohibited on Sunday unless a different schedule is approved by the Chief of Police and City Traffic Engineer. That is the department's recommendation.
Motion to approved based on the department's recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
The last item on the agenda is a patiently waiting. The Quincy Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 9th, 2016 at 9:50 in the first floor Boards and Commissions Room, Quincy City Hall, 1305 Hancock Street, on the proposed establishment of a housing development zone, HD zone, as part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Housing Development Incentive Program, HDIP. The HDIP, established as Mass General Laws, Chapter 40V, provides gateway cities with a development tool to increase residential growth, expand diversity of housing stock, support economic development, and promote neighborhood stabilization in designated areas. The HDIP authorizes the use of local and state incentives to sponsors that undertake substantial rehabilitation of properties to create market rate housing within an HD zone. The proposed HD zone includes the area bounded by a portion of Winter Street to the north and a portion of East Howard Street to the east. And copies, okay. Come up and identify yourself, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Robert Mollo. I'm with the Quincy Planning Department. And I will provide an overview of the HD plan and zone under the state's HDIP program. As you mentioned, this is a public hearing, and we are accepting testimony as well as from the planning board in the hopes of a recommendation to the city council who actually has to approve the HD zones plan. As you mentioned, the HDIP program is a state program designated for gateway cities only. There are 26 in the Commonwealth, the city of Quincy being one of them, and it incentivize the creation of market rate units in areas where market rents can't support the development costs. So I'd like to put a little bit of context around the rationale for the zone itself. We've submitted a plan and it includes the zone. The area that we're talking about is East Howard Street and parts of Winter Street. This is an area that has undergone recent neighborhood revitalization, many public and private investments that are outlined in the plan, all the way from the East Howard Street intersection to the soccer fields up the street and all the way up to, of course, the Fort River Bridge. There's public investments as well as private ones as well. However, the challenge here in this area is that the market rents can't support construction costs to create market rent units at a product that is desirable with full amenities to bring folks into this area. Central to the zone itself is 116 Howard Street, which is the General Dynamics, vacant General Dynamics building, administration building, as well as 3 other parcels of land. That particular parcel, 116 East Howard Street, received a special permit from the planning board in 2015 and is a central component of this plan to help revitalize the neighborhood. So that's really the context of the plan, or the actual zone itself. So the way it works, the way the market rate units are created through this incentive program are 2 ways. The first is a local real estate tax exemption on all or part of the increased property value resulting from those improvements. And that's just on the market rate units. The second incentive is access to state tax credits up to $2 million per project. And this is for all projects that are located within this zone.
Well, it's not.
Um,
It's because you're in the news about, so it's adjacent.
We've, I'm sorry. So what we've done is to create the zone essentially with this this proposal at 116 East Howard Street as really a centerpiece that we hope will spur this or continue this neighborhood revitalization effort. The proposal at East Howard Street is actually mixed income, and it's very important in this area to create this mixed income housing opportunity at a number of different affordability levels because it really continues the pathway and the goals outlined in the city's housing production plan that was recently approved by the city council and also received the board's blessing as well. And what that housing production plan states is that there is a diversity of housing stock that's needed for a number of different income levels, abilities, and as well as age cohorts. So what we're trying to do is help create this much needed housing for a number of projected needs, current and projected needs that the city is going to face over the next 5, 10, 15 years. The plan also advances a few other plans that we have currently adopted by the city, which is the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development require the city to submit a fair housing plan, which incorporates and integrates housing in our neighborhoods, regardless of fair housing protected classes, and also for a range of incomes, as well as HUD's consolidated plan, which we, the city, receive entitlement funds from the federal government and are charged with creating deed-restricted, income-restricted units. So, as outlined further in the actual plan itself, we feel there are many public benefits and opportunities at this level, at this juncture. For one, it will remove a blighted, vacant property that's been vacant for a few decades now. It will address the city's documented need for more housing stock that's affordable to households at varying income levels. As I previously mentioned, it actually reduces any city funding or as much city funding required because you can tap into the state funds and leverage those funds as well. It'll actually, the plan and any projects within the plan will have a significant impact on our subsidized housing inventory. The project at 116 East Howard Street, if approved and built, would add 140 units to the city's subsidized housing inventory under Chapter 40B. One component of the plan and the rationale behind it is to create that neighborhood stability and revitalize the neighborhood. Simply replacing a vacant building with activity, pedestrian activity, eyes on the street, you tend to have that effect of making a more cohesive community and neighborhood, as well as having more volume of individuals walking around, providing both safety and potentially also attracting future commercial uses around that neighborhood. As per the special permit that was approved, one of the conditions of the planning board was also infrastructure improvements. So that's a potential benefit of the area are those infrastructure improvements per the special permit conditions that were approved in April of 2015. As I mentioned, there are a number of properties around this area that have received city, state, and federal funding for deed-restricted housing. There are within the immediate area around 114 units that are restricted to households earning below 60% of the median income. So what, in essence, this plan and projects within this plan would do again is create that kind of mixed income, socioeconomically diverse neighborhood. as well as kind of access with the nonprofit that is active in the neighborhood, is access those existing support networks. For example, there's a community center in one of the buildings up on Winter Street that there are first-time homebuyer classes there. There are job training and educational workshops, financial education workshops there. It really kind of adds to that support network that already exists. And then finally, again, attracting new construction with amenities that will attract higher income households. We also hope to see any buildings that are built there are certainly sustainable, as well as have the smart growth design aspect in them as well. So what the plan and zone do not do, this plan does not approve any projects. It is simply an overlay. Any qualified projects that come in under this plan would have to be approved by the state, and certainly approved by this body or any of the legislative bodies for any kind of special permit or zoning relief. The plan does not actually set the market rates. Again, the plan is to incentivize the creation of market rate units, but this plan does not actually set those rents. Those rents would be set after a market analysis is completed. Both the city and the state have reviewed and approved that market analysis. And the plan and zone itself can be amended in the future. The state does require a minimum of 3 contiguous, I believe at least 2 contiguous parcels. What we did here was to be super specific to a proposal that we know is going to produce this mixed income housing stock. But in the future, if the city so desires, it can certainly amend the plan to include other parcels. So just to wrap up, again, the goal here is to really create those high quality units, but without the incentives with the current market rates in that neighborhood, it's challenging to do so. But if we're given the ability to do so, we could diversify the housing stock in an area that could benefit from the housing diversity, stabilize the neighborhood, and provide those revitalization opportunities in an area that's currently vacant.
Any questions from the board?
Just one quick question. Is this the first HD zone in Quincy, or are there others?
This would be the first one.
Any other questions? Member Kelly?
So there's the existing project that we permitted. How is this going to affect that? It's going to change?
It will change the affordability components of the proposal. I believe when it was approved and would be market rate. I believe the owner is under agreement with NeighborWorks of Southern Mass to purchase the property and create a more diverse income mix. So there would be still 140 units with the existing special permit. Now there would be 20% of those units would be market rate. 60% of those units would be workforce housing set aside. So households earning 110% of their median income and below, and then the last 20 affordable to households earning 50%. But the actual specs of the project do not change.
Jim Barry.
Just a comment that I'm glad that this came before us, because I was on the way to soccer just the other week, and I was looking at that property and thinking, why isn't this moving? And I think that this board has been a proponent to this area all the way from Quincy Ave, all the way over to Washington, and so if it needs help getting jump-started, I think that this is a great idea, so just my personal opinion. Thank you for all the work on this and bringing it to us.
And I'm going to put my 2 cents worth in because I know the tremendous job and work that the Department of Planning and Community Development does with its housing plan. I know Council Crowell, in a very short period of time, has made great strides trying to add to that. And I know, and I still call them neighborhood housing services, because I date myself when I've said it, the work that they've done, not only down in this area, but across the city, in doing, providing affordable housing. So thank you. One quick question. 140, how close does that bring us to the 10% threshold?
Closer, to approximately 9.7%.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing. Can I ask anybody that wishes to speak? Come forward, identify yourself.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rob Corley. I'm the Executive Director of NeighborWorks Southern Mass. And I'd like to urge you to recommend this to the City Council for a vote. This HDIP plan that the Planning Department has put together, and I'd like to thank the Planning Department for putting it together. We've been operating in Quincy for 35 years. We've been operating in Quincy Point for over 10 years now, doing various types of redevelopment, community development, real estate projects, and this particular zone will allow us to do a different type of project, not just affordable housing, but bring in middle-income housing and market-rate housing, which this area, Quincy Point, we believe needs. So as community developers, developing a mixed income is also part of the strategy of bringing the neighborhood back to full balance. And we're strong supporters of the HDIP program, as well as the governor. And Quincy is the only gateway city that hasn't at least have one HDIP zone. So I'm excited that this is finally happening. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. The recommendation is that whereas the City of Quincy is eligible for the Commonwealth's Housing Development Incentive Program, established under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, and whereas the Housing Development Incentive Program provides gateway cities with a development tool to increase residential growth, expand diversity of housing stock, support economic development, and promote neighborhood stabilization in designated areas by providing state and local tax incentives to sponsors to undertake substantial rehabilitation of properties for lease or sale as multi-unit marketing rate housing. Now therefore be it resolved by the Quincy Planning Board that we report to the Director of the City's Office of Planning and Community Development, the Mayor, and the Quincy City Council the following. We have received the City of Quincy's Housing Development Plan and Zone, and two, we find that the Housing Development Plan and Zone will further increase residential growth, expand diversity of housing stock, support economic development, and promote neighborhood stabilization in the designated area. And two, that we recommend that the Quincy City Council approve the City of Quincy's Housing Development Plan and Zone and authorize the mayor of the city to submit the plan to the Department of Housing and Community Development for approval. That's the recommendation.
I cannot say it any better. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to, I don't have any other business. Do you, Mr. Director?
No other business tonight.
Motion to adjourn? So moved. Record show it's 10:07. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.